लिए प्रार्थना कर रहे होंगे मनोमन, परंतु पूरे गुजरात की जो जनता है, जो वेल-विशर हैं, वो शुभेच्छक हैं, जो फैन हैं, वो सभी लगातार ये ईश्वर से प्रार्थना कर रहे हैं कि माता हीराबा जल्दी स्वस्थ हो जाएँ, और सब लोग अपेक्षित कर रहे हैं कि दूसरा जो बुलेटिन आए वो यही आए कि माता जी स्वस्थ हो चुकी हैं, और उनको हॉस्पिटल से छुट्टी दी जा रही है। ऐसी ऐसी सब कोई अपेक्षा रख रहे हैं, पर अभी तो पीएम नरेंद्र मोदी हॉस्पिटल पहुंचे हैं, और वो सबसे पहले तो अपनी माता जी को मिलेंगे, उनका हालचाल डॉक्टर से लेंगे, और उनको जो विशेष सूचना देने की जरूरत होगी वो डॉक्टर्स को अपनी तरफ से देंगे। जी
राइट। परिवार से कौन कौन मौजूद है गीता इस समय अस्पताल में?
जी, माता हीराबा, मैंने पहले भी बताया आपको कि माता हीराबा पीएम नरेंद्र मोदी के जो छोटे भाई हैं पंकज मोदी, उनके घर पे रहती हैं। तो उनके परिवार में माता जी के अलावा पंकज मोदी की जो पत्नी है वो रहती हैं। तो अभी जो हॉस्पिटल में उपस्थित है माता हीराबा के साथ जो परिवार, वो पंकज मोदी और उनकी पत्नी है। उनके बच्चे हैं, वो पढ़ाई के लिए बाहर स्थित है, तो वो अभी नहीं पहुंच पाए हैं। पर अभी जो है पंकज मोदी और उनकी पत्नी माता हीराबा के साथ लगातार हैं, और दूसरे भी पीएम मोदी के जो भाई हैं, दूसरे जो भाई हैं सोम भाई मोदी, वो भी वहाँ पे पहुंच चुके हैं अपने परिवार के साथ माता जी की खबर पूछने के लिए। तो अभी पंकज मोदी, सोम भाई मोदी, जो पीएम नरेंद्र मोदी के भाइयों का जो परिवार है
जी।
वो माता की जांच पड़ताल के लिए, उनकी खबर अंतर पूछने के लिए, उनकी हेल्थ की चिंता करते हुए वहाँ पे पहुंच चुके हैं। जी।
ऑलराइट, गीता प्लीज हमारे साथ बने रहिए। सिद्धांत इज आल्सो जॉइनिंग अस ऑन द ब्रॉडकास्ट। सिद्धांत, द अपडेट्स दैट यू हैव।
Of Prime Minister Modi reaching hospital, and we have also been told that other family members, the families of Prime Minister's brothers, they all have also arrived at the hospital, and the entire family has united at hospital. They all have met, and Prime Minister is going to stay with her mother. This is what we have been told. Till she completely recovers, and he's also going to speak to the doctors regarding her health, and whatever best possible will be done by the hospital and the state government. This is what we all have been told. In fact, Chief Minister Bhupen Patel is also there at the hospital, along with the other senior colleagues of the Gujarat government. So we can expect another medical release from the hospital by evening. Till now, the doctors have confirmed this to us, that she is recovering, she is stable, and she's reacting to the treatment that is being given to her. So this is a relief for Modi family and everyone who is watching this story closely. So we can expect another health bulletin to be issued by evening. Back to you.
Another health bulletin by the evening. Siddhant, despite being ripe of age, Prime Minister's mother, by God's grace, has enjoyed a good health, and we hope that she recovers very soon and gets out of the hospital. But today morning, there was a panic because there was a high blood pressure that was reported. She was admitted to the hospital. The Prime Minister rushed to see his mother. She was last seen in public eye when she stepped out to cast her vote during Gujarat elections. And on repeated occasions, we have seen the special bond between the Prime Minister and his mother.
Absolutely. And in fact, whenever Prime Minister is in Ahmedabad, he makes sure that he goes and visit his mother. And in fact, I remember photographs which were released by Prime Minister's office when Hiraba came to Delhi and stayed with Prime Minister's. And the kind of love, the bonding between mother and a son is something which is very easily visible, because I remember Prime Minister writing a blog when she entered her 100th year, and that was a very emotional blog written by Prime Minister, and talking about the sacrifices she has made and the values which today Prime Minister gives entire credit to her, whatever value he has. At the same time, he has also spoken about that how difficult her early life was. So Prime Minister has been speaking about his mother's simplicity, his extraordinary, her extraordinary personality, and in fact, during the last Vidhan Sabha polls in Gujarat, she did come out to vote, and whenever the Prime Minister used to visit her, they both used to have good time together, and she used to welcome Prime Minister with full in a full traditional way by doing a tika, by taking out the aarti of Prime Minister. So very enthusiastic woman, strong woman she is, and the bond is very special between the Prime Minister and his mother. And this is perhaps the reason that today, the time Prime Minister got to know that she has been admitted to the hospital, he immediately decided to rush to Ahmedabad. And look, there he is, next to his mother, and now the son has arrived, so he's definitely going to take good care of his mother. So, that kind of a bond is very much visible every time Prime Minister visits his mother.
All right, Siddhant, I want you to stay with us on the broadcast. Geeta Mehta from News 18 Gujarat, Janak Dave reporting from the ground. We'll continue getting you all the updates. The Chief Minister of the state was visiting the hospital. The Prime Minister is already in Ahmedabad. We'll continue getting you all the updates. For now, the update is that Prime Minister's mother, Hirabai, is stable. She's responding well to the treatment. We'll continue tracking the story on the other side of a quick break. Stay tuned.
टूरिज्म है उसके साथ जो यहाँ की फसलें हैं उसे उसका जो फायदा जो है इन चीजों को भी यहाँ पर जो मिल सके। लेकिन बात मैं अभी ठंड की भी करूं तो ठंड का जो है लगातार कहर यहाँ पे जारी है। सुबह और शाम के समय जो तापमान में खासी गिरावट यहाँ पर देखी जा रही है। हालांकि दोपहर के समय जो मौसम साफ है, जिस तरह आप मेरे पीछे ठीक तस्वीरों में देखते हैं इसमें कि मौसम बिल्कुल साफ है और धूप जो पहाड़ों में खिल चुकी है। तो आप इससे अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि इस तरह जो मौसम यहाँ पे चल रहा है। दोपहर के समय जो तापमान में जो बढ़ोतरी बेशक यहाँ पे देखी जा रही है, तो दोपहर का जो तापमान है वो 15 से 20 डिग्री के करीब जो यहाँ पे पहुंच रहा है। लेकिन जो सुबह और शाम का तापमान है उसमें जो है यहाँ पर खासी गिरावट देखी जा रही है। और मनाली में जिस तरह मैं बात कर रहा हूँ कि मनाली में 5 डिग्री का जो है आज का न्यूनतम तापमान जो यहाँ पर जो अभी का दर्ज किया गया, और इसके साथ ही लाहौल स्पीति में -15 से 20 डिग्री का तापमान वो जो है वहां पर जो दर्ज किया गया। तो इससे आप अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि किस तरह सुबह और शाम के समय जो किस तरह जो यहाँ पर जो लगातार जो ठंड पड़ती जा रही है। जी
सचिन जी, शुक्रिया हमें वो डिटेल्स देने के लिए और वो विजुअल्स दिखाने के लिए। आई एम आल्सो गोइंग टू बी क्रॉसिंग ओवर टू Shireen, to CNN News 18 Shireen Elizabeth, who's also joining us live from Delhi. Shireen, tell us where you are, tell us about the conditions there, because what the IMD has predicted is dense to very dense fog. Tell us more about the situation around you.
Well, today it is in fact much better than what the situation in past 2 days were. There is no much fog here. You can clearly see from here where I am standing at Vijay Chowk. The Rashtrapati Bhavan is in fact visible. There is a bit of fog here. For the past 2 days, we have seen how the temperature was about 5 degree to yesterday it was 7 degree. But today, right now it is about 10 degree and the sun is also out. So comparatively to the last 2 days, the situation in the national capital is much better. Though the IMD has predicted that the fog will last for about 48 hours. Today as well was supposed to be foggy, but the situation on ground looks much better though.
Welcome back. The national capital continues to shiver as minimum temperatures fell below what hill stations like Dehradun, Dharamshala and Nainital usually experience. Now, Delhi recorded a minimum temperature of 5.6 degrees yesterday, which is a notch below normal, whereas Dehradun recorded 7 degrees, Dharamshala recorded 6.2 degrees and Nainital recorded 7.2 degrees Celsius. Now, the Indian Meteorological Department has predicted cold to severe cold conditions for parts of North India over the next 2 days. The Weather Department has also said that parts of Uttarakhand, Delhi, Chandigarh, Haryana, Punjab and western Rajasthan will continue to experience dense to very dense fog.
ठंड बहुत पड़ रही है साहब। ठंड का मायने देखो हाथ की कांकरी हो रही है। ठंड काम भी कोई नहीं कर सकता। ठंड का मायने बहुत ज़्यादा ठंड पड़ रही है। सुबह पहाड़ जम जाए और ठंड का मान फसल भी खराब हो रही है साहब।
अपनी होटल है सर्किल पर, तो बाहर देखो ठंड को मौसम हो रही है ज़्यादा, नहीं के कारण ट्रक वाला बस वाला रुककर चाय पानी पीवे।
थोड़ी सी फसलां में नुकसान है। सुबह कोहरा छाया हुआ रहता है और हमारी फसल पर बर्फ़ सी जमी होती है। सुबह फसल का बहुत ही नुकसान होता है।
I'm crossing over to News 18 Sachin, who is joining us live from Manali. सचिन, आप मौसम और तापमान के बारे में और बता सकते हैं?
जी हाँ, देखिए अगर मैं बात करूँ इसमें हिमाचल प्रदेश और खासकर कुल्लू मनाली के मौसम की, तो यहाँ पर जो इसमें लगातार जो ठंड का प्रकोप लगातार जारी है। जिस तरह अगर मैं बात करूँ अभी के तापमान की, अगर मैं बात करूँ मनाली की, तो आज का जो न्यूनतम तापमान है वो -5 डिग्री के करीब जो है मनाली का तापमान यहाँ पर जो है दर्ज किया गया। हालाँकि जिस तरह लंबे अरसे से यहाँ पर जो इस बार बर्फबारी नहीं हुई, लेकिन बीते 2 दिन पहले जो मनाली के ऊपरी क्षेत्रों में जो बर्फबारी हुई थी, उसके कारण जो एक-एक घाटी में ठंड काफ़ी ज़्यादा बढ़ चुकी है और ऐसे में शुष्क ठंड इसमें काफ़ी ज़्यादा, और इससे ठंड से बचने के लिए लोग यहाँ पर जो है गर्म कपड़ों सहित जो अलाव का सहारा यहाँ पर लेते हुए नजर आ रहे हैं। हालाँकि इस बार जो है जिस तरह जो एक उम्मीद होती थी बर्फबारी की, वो यहाँ पर नहीं होने के कारण भी इस बार जो है लगातार ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है और आने वाले दिनों में ये अंदेशा जताया जा रहा है कि यदि जल्द से जल्द घाटी में यहाँ पे बर्फबारी नहीं होती, तो उससे कहीं न कहीं और ज्यादा ठंड यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ सकती है। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूँ हिमाचल प्रदेश की जो जिला लाहौल स्पीति है, जिसे जो है कोल्ड रेगिस्तान के नाम से भी जाना जाता है, वहां पर भी जो है तापमान जो है -15 डिग्री के करीब जो वहां पर जो पहुंच चुका, और इसके साथ ही जो बहने वाले नदी नाले और झरने हैं वो भी वहां पर जो है जमने आरंभ हो चुके हैं। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं जिस तरह जो ये मौसम लगातार जो यहाँ पर बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, ऐसे में सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत जो यहाँ के जो लोग हैं, बाशिंदे हैं, उन्हें आ रही है, क्योंकि शुष्क ठंड के चलते जो लोग यहाँ पर जो है सर्दी जुकाम की जो काफी शिकायतें आ रही है, और जो खासकर यहाँ के जो अस्पताल है वहां पर जो मरीजों की जो काफी ज्यादा लंबी लाइनें देखने को मिल रही है। और इसके साथ ही जिस तरह जो न्यू ईयर भी है, और ऐसे में न्यू ईयर को लेकर जो काफी सारे पर्यटक जो है कुल्लू मनाली का रुख कर रहे हैं, और ऐसे में सभी को उम्मीद है कि जल्द से जल्द जो घाटी में बर्फबारी हो। लेकिन जिस तरह मौसम बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, तो ऐसे में कहीं न कहीं उन्हें भी कुछ निराशा है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जो दिक्कत यहाँ पे आ रही है, वो जो है इस ठंड के कारण जो है सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत ये है कि इससे जो है, जिसे हिमाचल जो फलों के लिए भी जाना जाता है, खासकर सेब के लिए, तो उस सेब की फसल पर भी जो है इसका यहाँ पर जो असर साफ देखा जा रहा है, क्योंकि बर्फ ना होने के कारण जो है चीलिंग आवर जो होते हैं सेब के लिए, वो जो यहाँ पर पूरे नहीं हो पा रहे हैं। वो भी एक सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत है। और यदि इस बार जो है बर्फबारी यदि कम मात्रा में होती, तो इसका सीधा असर जो आगे आने वाले गर्मियों के दिनों में जो देखने को मिलेगा, क्योंकि जितनी कम बर्फबारी जो है पहाड़ों पर होगी, उससे जो है पानी का संकट भी यहाँ पर जो है खड़ा हो सकता है। ऐसे में सभी ये उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि जल्द से जल्द जो है बर्फबारी हो, और उसके जो है यहाँ के जो यहाँ की जो टूरिज्म है, उसके साथ जो यहाँ की फसलें हैं, उसे उसका जो फायदा जो है इन चीजों को भी यहाँ पर जो मिल सके। लेकिन बात में अभी ठंड की भी करूं, तो ठंड का जो है लगातार कहर यहाँ पे जारी है। सुबह और शाम के समय जो है तापमान में खासी गिरावट यहाँ पर देखी जा रही है। हालांकि दोपहर के समय जो मौसम साफ है, जिस तरह आप मेरे पीछे ठीक तस्वीरों में देखते हैं इसमें कि मौसम बिल्कुल साफ है और धूप जो पहाड़ों पे खिल चुकी है, तो आप इससे अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि इस तरह जो मौसम यहाँ पे चल रहा है। दोपहर के समय जो तापमान में जो बढ़ोतरी बेशक यहाँ पे देखी जा रही है, तो दोपहर का जो तापमान है वो 15 से 20 डिग्री के करीब जो यहाँ पे पहुंच रहा है, लेकिन जो सुबह और शाम का तापमान है उसमें जो है यहाँ पर खासी गिरावट देखी जा रही है। और मनाली में जिस तरह मैं बात कर रहा हूँ कि मनाली में 5 डिग्री का जो है आज का न्यूनतम तापमान जो यहाँ पर जो अभी का दर्ज किया गया, और इसके साथ ही लाहौल स्पीति में -15 से 20 डिग्री का तापमान वो जो है वहां पर
Welcome back. Let's begin with some latest news coming in. And after Congress leader Salman Khurshid's Ram Rahul analogy, former Defence Minister A.K. Antony says that Congress needs the support of Hindus to bring down the Modi government. That's what he has said. We'll try and play out that reaction for you. Let's listen in to A.K. Antony.
അവരിൽ ഭൂരിപക്ഷം നമ്മൾ നിർത്തണം. ന്യൂനപക്ഷം മാത്രം പോരാ, ഇന്ത്യൻ ജനങ്ങളിൽ ഭൂരിപക്ഷം പുരുഷ സമുദായം ഹിന്ദുക്കളാണ്. ന്യൂനപക്ഷത്തോടൊപ്പം ഹിന്ദുക്കളുടെ പുരുഷത്തെ കൂടി മോദിക്കെതിരാണ് സമരത്തിൽ കൂർത്താൻ സാധിക്കുന്നത്. അതിന് എല്ലാവരും കുറച്ചുകൂടി ജാഗ്രത പാലിക്കണം. ഇവിടെ മുസ്ലിമിനെ പള്ളിയിൽ പോകാം, ക്രിസ്ത്യാനിക്ക് പള്ളിയിൽ പോകാം. ഹൈന്ദവ സുഹൃത്തുക്കളിൽ ആരെങ്കിലും.
Pradeep Pillai and my colleague Pallavi Ghosh are joining us on the broadcast. Pradeep, coming to you first, give us more context to the statement of A.K. Antony.
Well, former Defence Minister A.K. Antony was speaking at the 130th birthday celebrations of the International Congress Party, which was organized by the state PCC at the KPCC headquarters here at Thiruvananthapuram. So while addressing the KPCC office bearers and those who were present there, he very clearly said that the Congress very clearly needs the support of the Hindus to bring down the Modi government. He went on to say that we have to win the trust of the majority. He said the support of the minorities alone is not enough, and the party needs the backing of the Hindus as well. He went on to expand and explain that the majority of the population are Hindus and they have to be brought along to stand with the party if the fight against Narendra Modi, Prime Minister, and the BJP has to be successful. And he pointed out a very classic example, as was the point of discussion and debate for a long, long time. He said the Muslims can go to the mosques, the Christians are allowed to go to the church. But if at all a Hindu goes to a temple and appears with a tilak or vermilion on his or her forehead, it is not correct to allege that this person is part of the soft Hindutva movement or allege soft Hindutva on them. It is not fair because the Hindus too have the right to worship. And he went on to add that such allegations and misinterpretation will only help the Modi government, the Modi administration, to return to power once again.
Very interesting comments
Anthony,
there.
Yes.
Very interesting comments there. Pallavi is also with us on the broadcast. Pallavi, I'm sure you heard what Pradeep said. Interesting comments coming in from A.K. Antony, quite different from the line of political narrative that the Congress party, at least at the national level, has adopted.
Yes, but internally the Congress party very much feels that this is the line that should be taken, which why it explains that the Hindutva agenda, or what is called as a soft Hindutva agenda, is what the Congress party is very much on. They also understand the perils of a polarization, the perils of being seen as a Muslim or minority appeasement party. In fact, interestingly, I remember when the Congress party lost in 2014 elections, there was an A.K. Antony committee report, and that was one of the main reasons which had been pointed out by Mr. A.K. Antony then, that the reason why the Congress party had also lost out was because it was seen as an appeasement party, where it had lost out on the Hindu vote bank, and the Congress party needs to win them back and also convince that there is a party which fights for the Brahmins, fights on the Hindutva agenda, which is why we see off late, I would say in the last year or so, at least in the last Lok Sabha elections, this temple hopping of Rahul Gandhi, talking about soft Hindutva. All of this is in sync with what Antony has said today.
All right, and that's the line perhaps which the Congress party internally feels should be adopted. Pradeep, you gave us a broader context to what A.K. Antony said in his address, and he also said that, if you do not call a Muslim or a Christian peddling any kind of soft narrative of their religion when they go to their places of worship, why would you have that kind of analogy for a Hindu? Have you seen A.K. Antony make statements like this in the public domain earlier, or this is a shift of narrative within the Congress party?
Yes, no. As far as A.K. Antony goes, this is not the first time he has spoken in such terms. While he was the chief minister the last time, his comments had really sparked off a major controversy where he hit out against the minorities in Kerala. As you know, there are two strong parties representing the minorities in Kerala. There is the Muslim League, or the IUML, the Indian Union Muslim League, which by far is a Muslim party. And we have the various factions of the Kerala Congress. The most powerful of them always remained with the Congress in the United Democratic Front. So while in power, Antony hit out against the minority, saying that the minorities always have got more than their due. And it is not correct to keep complaining that, they're not being given a fair deal. So this is definitely not the first time Antony has taken the stand. This time around, he has been more specific in terms of worship and belief. Back to you.
Yeah, very specific in terms of worship and belief. Pallavi, is A.K. Antony the first one? Could we see that internal realization of the Congress party, but that perhaps this is the narrative we should be picking up? Are we likely to see more leaders taking in that line? Because traditionally, Congress party has taken a very different narrative, as you were pointing out.
I would say that they have pushed forward this narrative which Mr. Antony is talking about. Digvijay Singh, for example, remember, he was always been accused of going soft on minorities. He goes on a Narmada Yatra, and then he also wants to put forward this point of view that, the Congress party does understand what Hinduism is all about. Of late, if you listen to Rahul Gandhi's sound bites during the Yatra, Anuja, he also keeps on talking about our Hinduism is very different from what BJP is talking about. Clear attempt at reaching out to the Hindu vote bank, also going to temples during the Yatra, and also being very, very cautious in not attacking the BJP on the Hindutva agenda. So I think the Congress party understands belatedly the perils of not going and following that vote bank, which Antony, who's someone who's very senior, who's veteran, who understood this way back in 2014.
Pallavi and Pradeep, please stay with us on the broadcast. I want to continue this fascinating conversation with my colleagues who are telling us about the narrative within the Congress party, AK Antony, and many more things. Shehzad Poonawalla of the BJP is also joining us on the broadcast. Good evening, Shehzad. Thank you so much for speaking to us. It's an interesting statement coming in from Congress leader AK Antony. He says that if a Muslim goes to a mosque and a Christian goes to a church, we never call them peddling any kind of soft religious agenda or a propaganda. Similarly, if a Hindu wears a tilak, why would you call them peddling soft Hindutva? That's not the narrative we should be pushing forward.
You know, this is a very candid confession by Mr. AK Antony. And even before this, when 2014 the Congress had lost, they had what was called the Antony report, but it was never actually worked upon. And therefore, today what has come out in the open is the appeasement politics of the Congress party, which has always led them down the path of abusing and insulting Hindus. We've seen recent examples how Geeta Ji was compared to jihad by Shivraj Patil, how the Congress party said Hindu is a dirty word, Hindu terror, Hindutva is like ISIS and Boko Haram, Shri Ram doesn't exist, Ram Mandir ko rokna, Ram Mandir ke bhumi pujan par virod karna. So this long chain of Hindu phobia and Hindu hatred of the Congress today has been called out by their own. We have been saying from the day one that in the name of vote bank ka bhaijan, they have been doing Hinduon ka apman, and therefore they should stop this Tushtikaran ki dukan. And today I think that's what AK Antony has also said to them. But perhaps it will be waited to be seen if this falls on deaf ears or whether some action is taken on it, because time and again the Congress party just wants to walk the path of appeasement politics.
Shehzad, stay with us on the broadcast. Sanjay Jha of the Congress party is also joining us. Sanjay Jha, who's a political analyst and a former Congress leader, I correct my statement. Mr. Jha, should we see this as some kind of admission by the Congress party that they have always followed the politics of appeasement? Because AK Antony says we need the support of Hindus as well if we want to bring down the Modi government. That means they've only focused on a certain vote bank. That's what the BJP is saying.
Well, before I answer your question, I want to just put it on record that I heard the BJP spokesperson on your show speaking before me. You know, this is a party that has got a Pragya Thakur who's openly talking about weaponizing people and kind of encouraging a violent manifestation of hate in this country. The BJP is polarized the country, is dividing the country, is fracturing the country, is now beyond doubt. And this is a member of parliament, and India's Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, hasn't said a word. So the BJP, I think, is the most hypocritical, repugnant, and reprehensible party that is a shame to India's democracy and constitution.
Sanjay ji, I'll take that question to Shehzad, and I will seek a response on that. The moot point here, sir.
Yeah, but first let me answer your question.
Sure.
Yeah, the answer is very straightforward. The Congress has won 10 of the 17 general elections as late as 2004 and 2009. You think they won it on the basis of just 14% of the Muslim votes? I mean, the country is not, by the way, a Hindu-Muslim binary that the BJP wants it to become. The question is, this country is a secular democracy. I know there are BJP leaders who want to remove secularism from the constitution, but they will fail. By the way, I belong to the Hindu community. I'm a very proud practicing Hindu. And the question that you need to ask the BJP spokesperson on your show was more like a Bollywood scriptwriter as to who has given the right to the BJP and the RSS to speak on behalf of a religion. Who's appointed them as the custodians? They're doing nothing but blatant and brazen political mobilization. They're exploiting the Hindus as well. They are abusing the minority community and they're exploiting the Hindus only because they want to.
Mr. Jha, I'll take that question to Shehzad, and here is hearing what you said. I'm sure he's going to respond to it. But before that, I want to ask then, how should we see the electoral victory of BJP one after the other if they're exploiting Hindus in this country?
Well, I can tell you, this is what they do, right? Because they are basically playing in the psychological mindset that the 80% of India, which is the majority, are under threat from the minorities. I mean, this is a propaganda.
Well, sir, if the Congress party cannot come to power, you said more than dozens of elections that the Congress party has won, and they would have not won it merely on the basis of Muslim votes in this country. That's a fair point that you made. In the similar way, I don't think any political party, including the BJP, can come to power merely by quote-unquote manipulating their fears or playing the politics of propaganda. To some extent, their development agenda, the narrative of the government has to sit well with the people as well. Just making the same argument to you that you were making to me. Shehzad, I'm coming back to you. There are various allegations that Mr. Sanjay Jha has made. Your response to them?
No, I don't think that Congress party takes Sanjay Jha too seriously. So, those who are suspended in situation and in logic, I don't think I need to respond to them. I think it is a moment for the Congress to introspect. A senior leader like A.K. Antony has spoken. Now it is upon them if they want to continue walking down this path where they label the entire country communal like their suspended leader has. Just because they lose an election, they tell the electorate is communal. They call Hindus as terrorists. They call saffron as the color of terrorism. They make analogies between Hindutva and ISIS and Boko Haram. If they want to continue doing that, well, they will see what has happened in Gujarat, and those results will continue to emanate. But having said that, the A.K. Antony report and the A.K. Antony comment that has come out, this is a moment that the Congress should use for introspection. They should perhaps sit and ask themselves why, in the name of vote bank politics, they have pursued a path of abusing, insulting Hindus time and again. And that is what has been called out by A.K. Antony. They should now introspect on this.
They should introspect on it. Mr. Sanjay Jha, the BJP has continued to allege that the Congress party has always followed a politics of appeasement. On repeated occasions on the issue of Ram Mandir and various other issues, the Congress party was not seen siding with the sentiments of the Hindu community. In fact, it was called out to be a communal agenda when there were demands of construction of a Ram Mandir. How do you respond to that entire narrative of the BJP that Congress party is quote-unquote anti-Hindu?
Well, this is the agenda that has been spread by Narendra Modi and Amit Shah. And we all know why. End of day, you had a Supreme Court telling the government that on hate speech, the government had turned a blind eye. You had the UN Human Rights Commission talking about atrocities against the minority community. I mean, this is a shame, honestly. And let me tell you, as far as this entire vicious and a very malicious propaganda has been done, simple question to the BJP. And, the spared Shehzad, ask this of Narendra Modi whenever he does a press conference hopefully another 1 year. Ask him this question. Do you think that aren't you insulting the voters who have voted for the Congress reputedly in several general elections, more than the BJP, by the way, and in several state elections? I don't think the average voter of this country really cares. Average voter of this country is very aware of India's constitution and its rich cultural heritage. The BJP is trying to poison this country. The BJP is basically a party that is so bigoted in its RSS and its complete, what I call as the Hindutva color, which is not Hinduism. I believe people like us are the true Hindus who practice compassion, religious tolerance, who have basically a very open mind, who respect the diversity of this country. Not like the BJP. I mean, you know what the leaders say all the time. Pragya Thakur is one, but there are hundreds of hate speeches on record. I mean, anybody who can Google it. I mean, you have Amit Shah going to Gujarat and talking about teaching rioters a lesson. You know what he was trying to say?
All right.
So, I mean, end of day, it's a dog whistle politics which is done by the top leadership.
Shehzad, I do believe that... I do believe there are many things that have been said by Mr. Sanjay Jha, but I think one point that he's making, and I will continue talking about A.K. Antony's statement, what it says about the Congress party, but it's only fair that I take your reaction on the hate speech issue that Mr. Jha elaborated upon. Why don't you speak about that? Shehzad, if you can still hear me. We seem to have lost that line with Shehzad Poonawalla of the BJP. We'll try and take reaction. Sanjay Jha continues to be with us. Pallavi Ghosh, my colleague, has been reporting from the ground. Pradeep Pillai is also with us on the show. A.K. Antony, the former defence minister and the Congress leader, has made a statement where he has said that if the Congress party wants to bring down the Modi government, then they need the support of Hindus as well. Merely the support from the minority community would not help. Now, there are two parts to the statement. One, of course, the BJP is saying that this is some kind of an implicit acceptance of the fact that the Congress party has played the politics of vote bank. Mr. Jha, I'm coming back to you. Let's forget what the BJP does and whether they have a political moral license to ask questions to the Congress or not, that aside. But the fact that this is coming in from a senior leader of the Congress party, isn't it an indirect admission of the fact that somewhere the Congress party has focused on a certain vote bank and its consolidation and has relied on it for certain benefits? I'm not saying that's the sole benefit or that's the sole vote bank that the Congress party has, but yes, indeed it has been one of the important pillars for them to cement their electoral victories.
Well, let me give you a quick response to that. You are aware that recently the Congress party defeated the BJP in Himachal Pradesh elections. What is the minority population in Himachal Pradesh? 5%. So Mr. Antony's allegation is basically, in my opinion, unfounded. But there is a flip side to the story. The flip side to the story is really the Congress's weak communication. You see, the whole game, and you're in media, I think you know it probably better than me, the whole game in politics, at least in our country, is based on optics, is based on perception and atmospherics. Now, all over the world, in every democracy, there is a whole, concept of what perceptions are. They matter. They usually matter. But in India, it's all become about social media positioning, what is being said, and nobody really focuses on the ground realities. The failure of the Congress, and that I'm willing to admit very publicly on your program, is the inability to counter the BJP's malicious propaganda. Now, let me tell you, I'm in politics. You think any politician in this country can win an election by focusing on 14% votes? Now, the simple logic that the Congress party is not able to convince the country, and it should, because it's a very easy one to do. If there are 100 voters in the country and 80 are Hindus and the balance 20 are minorities, the one who's obviously, if you want to win an election, why would you only focus on 20? If you reduce this conversation to a crude arithmetic of, vote shares, why would the Congress party focus on only the 20%? It would always.
Well, sir, I don't have the BJP spokesperson to counter that argument, but what we've heard from the other side is that the Hindu vote bank has always been divided on the caste line, and the Muslim vote bank by certain political parties has been consolidated for their own political benefits. But we'll continue this debate, sir. I'm sure there is no end to that. Thank you, Mr. Jha, for your time and for joining us on the broadcast. Once again, playing out what A.K. Antony said. Listen in.
ഇന്ത്യയിലെ ജനങ്ങൾ നാനാജാതി വ്യവസ്ഥരാണ്, ജാതിക്കാരാണ്. അവരിൽ ഭൂരിപക്ഷം തമ്മിൽ നിർത്തണം. ന്യൂനപക്ഷം മാത്രം പോരാ. ഇന്ത്യൻ ജനങ്ങളിൽ ഭൂരിപക്ഷം പുരുഷ സമുദായം ഹിന്ദുക്കളാണ്. ന്യൂനപക്ഷത്തോടൊപ്പം ഹിന്ദുക്കളുടെ പുരുഷത്തെ കൂടി മോദിക്കെതിരാണ് സമരത്തിൽ കൂർത്താൻ സാധിക്കുന്നത്. അതിന് എല്ലാവരും കുറച്ചുകൂടി ജാഗ്രത പാലിക്കണം. ഇവിടെ മുസ്ലിമിന് പള്ളിയിൽ പോകാം, ക്രിസ്ത്യാനിക്ക് പള്ളിയിൽ പോകാം. ഹൈന്ദവ സുഹൃത്തുക്കളിൽ ആരെങ്കിലും അമ്പലത്തിൽ പോയാൽ, നെറ്റിയിൽ തിലകം ചാർത്തിയാൽ, ചന്ദനക്കുളിട്ടാൽ പോലും തന്നെ അവർ മധു ഹിന്ദുത്വ സ്വീകരിക്കുന്നവരുടെ സമീപനം, ആ സമീപനം മോഡിയുടെ ഭരണം വീണ്ടും വരാൻ മാത്രമേ സഹായിക്കൂ. അതെല്ലാവരും ഓർത്തിരിക്കണം. ന്യൂനപക്ഷങ്ങൾക്ക് അവരുടെ വിശ്വാസങ്ങളും ഒരാരാധന തുടരാൻ സാധിക്കുന്നത് തന്നെ അതിൻ്റെ ഭൂരിപക്ഷം വരുന്ന ഹിന്ദുക്കൾക്ക് അവർ ആരാധനാലയങ്ങളിൽ പോകാനും അവർക്ക് കളപ്പക്കുറി ചാർത്താനും ചന്ദനക്കുറി ചാർത്താനും തിലകം ചാർത്താനൊക്കെ അതാണ് അംഗീകരിച്ചില്ലെങ്കിൽ ഈ രാജ്യത്ത് വീണ്ടും മോഡി തിരിച്ചു.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of CNN News 18. Thank you for watching this site.
भी लाइनें देखने को मिल रही है और इसके साथ ही जिस तरह जो न्यू ईयर भी है और ऐसे में न्यू ईयर को लेकर जो काफी सारे पर्यटक जो है कुल्लू मनाली का रुख कर रहे हैं और ऐसे में सभी को उम्मीद है कि जल्द से जल्द जो घाटी में बर्फबारी हो, लेकिन जिस तरह मौसम बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है तो ऐसे में कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भी कुछ निराशा है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जो दिक्कत यहाँ पे आ रही है वो जो है इस ठंड के कारण जो है सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत ये है कि इससे जो है जिसे हिमाचल जो फलों के लिए भी जाना जाता है, खासकर सेब के लिए, तो उस सेब की फसल पर भी जो है इसका यहाँ पर जो असर साफ देखा जा रहा है, क्योंकि बर्फ ना होने के कारण जो है चीलिंग आवर जो होते हैं सेब के लिए वो जो यहाँ पर पूरे नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, वो भी एक सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत। और यदि इस बार जो है बर्फबारी यदि कम मात्रा में होती तो इसका सीधा असर जो आगे आने वाले गर्मियों के दिनों में जो देखने को मिलेगा, क्योंकि जितनी कम बर्फबारी जो है पहाड़ों पर होगी उससे जो है पानी का संकट भी यहाँ पर जो है खड़ा हो सकता है। ऐसे में सभी ये उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि जल्द से जल्द जो है बर्फबारी हो और उसके जो है यहाँ के जो यहाँ की जो टूरिज्म है उसके साथ जो यहाँ की फसलें हैं उसे उसका जो फायदा जो है इन चीजों को भी यहाँ पर जो मिल सके। लेकिन बात में अभी ठंड की भी करूं तो ठंड का जो है लगातार कहर यहाँ पे जारी है। सुबह और शाम के समय जो है तापमान में खासी गिरावट यहाँ पर देखी जा रही है। हालांकि दोपहर के समय जो मौसम साफ है, जिस तरह आप मेरे पीछे ठीक तस्वीरों में देखते हैं इसमें कि मौसम बिल्कुल साफ है और धूप जो है पहाड़ों पे खिल चुकी है, तो आप इससे अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि इस तरह जो मौसम यहाँ पे चल रहा है। दोपहर के समय जो तापमान में जो बढ़ोतरी बेशक यहाँ पे देखी जा रही है, तो दोपहर का जो तापमान है वो 15 से 20 डिग्री के करीब जो यहाँ पे पहुंच रहा है, लेकिन जो सुबह और शाम का तापमान है उसमें जो है यहाँ पर खासी गिरावट देखी जा रही है। और मनाली में जिस तरह मैं बात कर रहा हूँ कि मनाली में 5 डिग्री का जो है आज का न्यूनतम तापमान जो यहाँ पर जो अभी का दर्ज किया गया, और इसके साथ ही लाहौल स्पीति में -15 से 20 डिग्री का तापमान वो जो है वहां पर जो है दर्ज किया गया। तो इससे आप अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि किस तरह सुबह और शाम के समय जो किस तरह जो यहाँ पर जो लगातार जो ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है। जी
सचिन जी, शुक्रिया हमें वो डिटेल्स देने के लिए और वो विजुअल्स दिखाने के लिए। आई एम आल्सो गोइंग टू बी क्रॉसिंग ओवर टू Shireen, to CNN News 18 Shireen Elizabeth, who's also joining us live from Delhi. Shireen, tell us where you are, tell us about the conditions there, because what the IMD has predicted is dense to very dense fog. Tell us more about the situation around you.
Well, today it is in fact much better than what the situation in past 2 days were. There is no much fog here. You can clearly see from here where I am standing at Vijay Chowk. The Rashtrapati Bhavan is in fact visible. There is a bit of fog here. For the past 2 days, we have seen how the temperature was about 5 degree to yesterday it was 7 degree, but today right now it is about 10 degree and the sun is also out. So comparatively to the last 2 days, the situation in the national capital is much better. Though the IMD has predicted that the fog will last for about 48 hours. Today as well was supposed to be foggy, but the situation on ground looks much better though.
Welcome back. The national capital continues to shiver as minimum temperatures fell below what hill stations like Dehradun, Dharamshala and Nainital usually experience. Now, Delhi recorded a minimum temperature of 5.6 degrees yesterday, which is a notch below normal, whereas Dehradun recorded 7 degrees, Dharamshala recorded 6.2 degrees and Nainital recorded 7.2 degrees Celsius. Now, the Indian Meteorological Department has predicted cold to severe cold conditions for parts of North India over the next 2 days. The Weather Department has also said that parts of Uttarakhand, Delhi, Chandigarh, Haryana, Punjab and western Rajasthan will continue to experience dense to very dense fog.
ठंड बहुत पड़ रही है साहब। ठंड का मायने देखो हाथ की कांकरी हो रही है। ठंड काम भी कोई दिक्कत से ठंड का मायने बहुत ज़्यादा ठंड पड़ रही है। सुबह पावड़ जम जाए और ठंड का मान फसल भी खराब हो रही है साहब।
हाँ, अपनी होटल है सर्किल पर, तो बाहर देखो ठंड को मौसम हो रहा है ज़्यादा, नहीं के कारण ट्रक वाला बस वाला रुककर चाय पानी पीवे।
थोड़ी सी फसलां में नुकसान है। सुबह कोहरा छाया हुआ रहता है और हमारी फसल पर बर्फ़ सी जमी होती है। सुबह सुबह फसल का बहुत ही नुकसान होता है।
I'm crossing over to News 18 Sachin, who is joining us live from Manali. Sachin, आप मौसम और तापमान के बारे में और बता सकते हैं?
जी हाँ, देखिए अगर मैं बात करूं इसमें हिमाचल प्रदेश और खासकर कुल्लू मनाली के मौसम की, तो यहाँ पर जो इसमें लगातार जो ठंड का प्रकोप लगातार जारी है। जिस तरह अगर मैं बात करूं अभी के तापमान की, अगर मैं बात करूं मनाली की, तो आज का जो न्यूनतम तापमान है वो -5 डिग्री के करीब जो है मनाली का तापमान यहाँ पर जो है दर्ज किया गया। हालांकि जिस तरह लंबे अरसे से यहाँ पर जो इस बार बर्फबारी नहीं हुई, लेकिन बीते 2 दिन पहले जो मनाली के ऊपरी क्षेत्रों में जो बर्फबारी हुई थी उसके कारण जो एक घाटी में ठंड काफी ज्यादा बढ़ चुकी है और ऐसे में शुष्क ठंड इसमें काफी ज्यादा, और इससे ठंड से बचने के लिए लोग यहाँ पर जो है गर्म कपड़ों सहित जो अलाव का सहारा यहाँ पर लेते हुए नजर आ रहे हैं। हालांकि इस बार जो है जिस तरह जो एक उम्मीद होती थी बर्फबारी की, वो यहाँ पर नहीं होने के कारण भी इस बार जो है लगातार ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है। और आने वाले दिनों में ये अंदेशा जताया जा रहा है कि यदि जल्द से जल्द घाटी में यहाँ पे बर्फबारी नहीं होती तो उससे कहीं ना कहीं और ज्यादा ठंड यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ सकती है। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं हिमाचल प्रदेश की जो जिला लाहौल स्पीति है, जिसे जो है कोल्ड रेगिस्तान के नाम से भी जाना जाता है, वहां पर भी जो है तापमान जो है -15 डिग्री के करीब जो वहां पर जो पहुंच चुका, और इसके साथ ही जो बहने वाले नदी नाले और झरने हैं वो भी वहां पर जो है जमने आरंभ हो चुके हैं। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं जिस तरह जो मौसम लगातार जो यहाँ पर बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, ऐसे में सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत जो यहाँ के जो लोग हैं, बाशिंदे हैं, उन्हें आ रही है, क्योंकि शुष्क ठंड के चलते जो लोग यहाँ पर जो है सर्दी जुकाम की जो काफी शिकायतें आ रही है, और जो खासकर यहाँ के जो अस्पताल है वहां पर जो मरीजों की जो काफी ज्यादा लंबी लाइनें देखने को मिल रही है। और इसके साथ ही जिस तरह जो न्यू ईयर भी है, और ऐसे में न्यू ईयर को लेकर जो काफी सारे पर्यटक जो है कुल्लू मनाली का रुख कर रहे हैं, और ऐसे में सभी को उम्मीद है कि जल्द से जल्द जो घाटी में बर्फबारी हो। लेकिन जिस तरह मौसम बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, तो ऐसे में कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भी कुछ निराशा है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जो दिक्कत यहाँ पे आ रही है वो जो है इस ठंड के कारण जो है सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत ये है कि इससे जो है जिसे हिमाचल जो फलों के लिए भी जाना जाता है, खासकर सेब के लिए, तो उस सेब की फसल पर भी जो है इसका यहाँ पर जो असर साफ देखा जा रहा है, क्योंकि बर्फ ना होने के कारण जो है चीलिंग आवर जो होते हैं सेब के लिए वो जो यहाँ पर पूरे नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, वो भी एक सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत। और यदि इस बार जो है बर्फबारी यदि कम मात्रा में होती तो इसका सीधा असर जो आगे आने वाले गर्मियों के दिनों में जो देखने को मिलेगा, क्योंकि जितनी कम बर्फबारी जो है पहाड़ों पर होगी उससे जो है पानी का संकट भी यहाँ पर जो है खड़ा हो सकता है। ऐसे में सभी ये उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि जल्द से जल्द जो है बर्फबारी हो और उसके जो है यहाँ के जो यहाँ की जो टूरिज्म है, उसके साथ जो यहाँ की फसलें हैं, उसे उसका जो फायदा।
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching CNN News 18. This is Nation at 5 with me, Poonam Burde. Let's get you started with what's happening in Gujarat, where the Prime Minister is currently. He's in Ahmedabad. He's visiting his ailing mother, Hiraba, who was hospitalized this morning. The hospital has released a medical health bulletin going on to say that her condition is stable. We're given to understand that Prime Minister Modi is likely to stay in Ahmedabad today. And across political party lines, politicians have been taking to Twitter, to social media, to let the Prime Minister know that they stand with him in this tough time and hoping for his mother's quick recovery. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge and leaders Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi as well took to Twitter and expressed their support. Politicians from other political parties as well taking to Twitter, standing with the Prime Minister. Mayur, my colleague, now joins us for more on this. He's on ground there in Ahmedabad. मयूर, क्या खबर आ रही है? क्या प्रधानमंत्री आज अहमदाबाद में ही रुकेंगे या उनका दिल्ली रवाना होना कुछ ही देर में पॉसिबल है?
जी बिल्कुल, प्रधानमंत्री अभी UN मेहता हॉस्पिटल पहुंचे हैं। वहां चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ गुजरात भूपेंद्र पटेल उनके साथ है। साथ ही अब जो अस्पताल के डीन है उनके साथ भी उन्होंने मुलाकात है वो की। उन्होंने माताजी की जो तबीयत है उसके बारे में पूरा ब्यौरा दिया और उसके बाद माताजी को मिलने के लिए प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी अभी पहुंचे हैं। अभी जिस तरह से खबर मिल रही है उस मुताबिक प्रधानमंत्री अभी भी 2-3 घंटे अहमदाबाद रुकेंगे, ऐसे जो मैसेज है वो मिल रहे हैं। अभी जो कंडीशन है हीराबा की वो स्टेबल है। बाकायदा जो हेल्थ बुलेटिन है वो भी हॉस्पिटल के द्वारा जारी किया गया है। दूसरा हेल्थ बुलेटिन में भी उनकी जो कंडीशन है वो स्टेबल है, इस तरह का जो हेल्थ बुलेटिन है वो दिखाया गया है। और साथ ही अभी जो है प्रधानमंत्री हीराबा से मिल रहे हैं। अब देखना ये होगा कि प्रधानमंत्री कब तक रुकते हैं। अगर गुजरात सरकार की बात की जाए तो स्वास्थ्य मंत्री ऋषिकेश पटेल भी वहां पहुंचे हुए हैं। होम मिनिस्टर जो है वो भी वहां पहुंचे हुए हैं। और अभी पूरा जो गुजरात गवर्नमेंट का तंत्र है वो भी हॉस्पिटल पे ही है, प्रधानमंत्री अभी है। और अभी जिस तरह की खबर मिल रही है 2 से 3 घंटे हॉस्पिटल में ही रुकेंगे, इस तरह की खबर अभी अंदर से मिल रही है।
जी, हाल फिलहाल के लिए प्रधानमंत्री अभी अस्पताल में ही रहेंगे। मयूर, जैसे आप बता रहे थे कि स्वास्थ्य मंत्री मुख्यमंत्री गुजरात के भी वहीं हैं, इसके बाद क्या कार्यक्रम रहेगा प्रधानमंत्री का? क्या इसके बारे में कोई जानकारी है? क्या उनके अन्य जो भाई बहन हैं या उनके फैमिली मेंबर्स हैं, क्या वो भी आ सकते हैं हॉस्पिटल या वो ऑलरेडी वहीं हैं?
जी बिल्कुल, प्रधानमंत्री के छोटे भाई पंकज मोदी के साथ माता हीराबा जो है वो रहते हैं। तो पंकज मोदी ही उन्हें अस्पताल सुबह ले गए थे। तब डॉक्टरों ने उनकी जो जांच है वो की थी। सांस लेने में उनको दिक्कत आ रही थी, सीटी स्कैन उनका करवाया गया था और उसके बाद जो है उनको एडमिट किया गया था। धीरे धीरे सब भाई प्रधानमंत्री के जो बड़े भाई सोम भाई है वो भी पहुंचे हुए हैं हॉस्पिटल, और दूसरे जो प्रहलाद भाई है वो भी अस्पताल पहुंचेंगे। यानी धीरे धीरे पूरा परिवार है वो भी अस्पताल पहुंचने वाला है। छोटे भाई पंकज मोदी और बड़े भाई सोम भाई मोदी वो दोनों अभी अस्पताल में ही है। और अब देखना ये होगा कि अब अस्पताल से किस तरह का हेल्थ बुलेटिन है वो जारी किया जाता है और अभी किस तरह की जो कंडीशन है वो है। अभी अब जिस तरह से दूसरा बुलेटिन निकाला था तो उसमें स्टेबल बताया जा रहा था। तो अब देखना ये होगा कि प्रधानमंत्री कितनी देर तक रुकते हैं और उनके परिवार के कौन कौन से सदस्य है वो भी आ रहे हैं। 2 भाई उनके हैं, एक बड़े भाई और छोटे भाई, वो अभी अस्पताल में ही है।
जी बिल्कुल, बने रहिए हमारे साथ। जनक दवे also joins us from outside the UN Mehta Hospital where the Prime Minister's mother is currently hospitalized. जनक, प्रधानमंत्री अभी वही हैं, चीफ मिनिस्टर भूपेंद्र पटेल, स्वास्थ्य मंत्री भी वही हैं। क्या और बीजेपी के नेता, क्या और मंत्री भी आना उनका अपेक्षित है?
देखिए फिलहाल भूपेंद्र पटेल तो निकल चुके हैं, लेकिन पीएम मोदी अभी भी वहाँ पर चौथे मंजिले पर, जो मैंने बताया उस मुताबिक वहाँ पर अभी भी हैं और वहाँ पर हीराबा का इलाज चल रहा है। ये जो तस्वीरें हम दिखा देते हैं आपको, यूएन मेहता अस्पताल के बाहर की तस्वीरें हैं ये, और जो बैरिकेड है वो पूरी तरीके से कर दिया गया है। उनका जो कॉन्वॉय है वो भी अभी पूरी तरीके से दिख रहा है। हो सकता है कि यहीं से पीएम मोदी आज शाम को ही दिल्ली के लिए जा भी सकते हैं और रुक भी सकते हैं, दोनों। चूँकि अभी तक मेडिकल बुलेटिन इसका आया नहीं, चूँकि जो यहाँ पर जो आर के पटेल हैं, यूएन मेहता के जो डीन, उनकी निगरानी में पूरा इलाज चल रहा है और उनसे वो पूरी जानकारी ले रहे हैं कि किस तरीके की स्थिति है। और उनको जो कि चीफ विश रूम में रखा गया है, वहाँ पर पीएम मोदी हैं और आर के पटेल उनको पूरी मेडिकल की जो हिस्ट्री है वो देते हुए सारी चीज़ों का ब्यौरा भी दे रहे हैं कि किस तरीके से मेडिकल प्रोटोकॉल्स रहे हैं और सुबह से उनका इलाज किस तरीके, जब सुबह उनको लाया गया सांस लेने में दिक्कत थी, उसके बाद की किस तरीके की स्थिति रही। और जिस तरीके से मयूर ने बताया, पंकज मोदी उनको लेकर आए थे, जिनके साथ वो रहती हैं, और सुबह ही पीएम को इस बारे में अवगत भी कराया गया था और पीएम लगातार अपडेट लेते रहे थे। और उसके बाद 1:30 बजे ये तय हुआ कि पीएम भी यहाँ पर उनका हालचाल पूछने के लिए यहाँ पर आएंगे। और उसी समय पर एक मेडिकल बुलेटिन भी आया, उसमें लिखा गया है कि फिलहाल उनका जो हालत है वो स्थिर है और स्टेबल बनी हुई है। और अभी उम्मीद की जा सकती है कि पीएम जब यहाँ से निकले उस समय एक और मेडिकल बुलेटिन, क्योंकि अमूमन 5 से 6 घंटे के बीच में एक नया मेडिकल बुलेटिन आता है, तो किस तरीके की स्थिति है वो पता चलेगी। जहाँ तक लोगों का बात है, आपने जो सवाल पूछा वीवीआईपी का, तो यहाँ पर अभी भी जो सांसद परिमल नाथवानी है वो यहाँ पर हैं, उसके अलावा स्वास्थ्य मंत्री हैं वो यहाँ पर है, चूँकि मुख्यमंत्री यहाँ से निकल चुके हैं। सारे अहमदाबाद के जो विधायक हैं वो यहाँ पर हैं, चाहे आप गांधीनगर दक्षिण से अल्पेश ठाकुर कह लीजिए, अहमदाबाद वेजलपुर से अमित ठाकर कह लीजिए, एलिस ब्रिज से यहाँ अमित शाह कह लीजिए, ये तमाम जो विधायक हैं वो यहाँ पर आए हुए हैं। और अभी फ़िलहाल जो वीवीआईपी मूवमेंट है वो लगातार अभी चल रहा है और पीएम अभी ऊपर हैं। और उसके बाद जब तो हो सकता है थोड़ी देर बाद वो यहाँ पर नीचे आए, उसके बाद आधिकारिक तौर पर अस्पताल की ओर से एक मेडिकल बुलेटिन जारी हो सकता है।
जी बिल्कुल, प्रधानमंत्री कुछ ही देर में निकल सकते हैं, रवाना हो सकते हैं वहां से, तभी शायद एक और मेडिकल हेल्थ बुलेटिन रिलीज हो हॉस्पिटल से। और कुछ ही दिनों पहले जनक, प्रधानमंत्री अपनी मां से मिले थे जिस दिन दूसरा पड़ाव था चुनाव का, जिस दिन हीराबा और प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने अपना वोट कास्ट किया था। इसी महीने की बात है, वो कुछ दिन पहले की।
बिल्कुल, उस समय भी जब पीएम मोदी को मौका मिलता है वो ज़रूर हीराबा को मिलने जाते हैं। और वो तस्वीरें भी, हर तस्वीरें वो आपको याद होगी कि जब भी वो वहाँ पर जाते हैं तो बिना प्रोटोकॉल के, यहाँ पे कुछ एक मूवमेंट हो रही है, इसके चलते हमें थोड़ा हटना होगा, लेकिन मैं जो बात कर रहा हूँ आपको कि जो बिना प्रोटोकॉल के वो वहाँ पर अपनी माँ को मिलने जाते हैं। सिक्योरिटी में महज 1 या 2 कार होती हैं, वो और वहाँ पर जाते हैं मिल से, और जितना समय बिता सके क्वालिटी टाइम जो कहें वो बिताना चाहते हैं और वो बिताते आए। साथ में हो सकता है तो या डिनर भी उनके साथ लेते हैं। वो तस्वीरें भी हमने इससे पहले लिखी कि चाहे खिचड़ी हो और भाकरी और सब्जी हो, वो भी एक जो गुजराती खाना होता है वो उनके साथ लेते रहे। उससे पहले 18 जून को जब 100 साल हीराबा के पूरे हुए, शताब्दी वर्ष के तौर पर पीएम का वो आर्टिकल भी आपको याद होगा जिसमें उन सारी बातों का उन्होंने ब्यौरा किया था कि किस तरीके की उनकी स्ट्रगल वाली पूरी ज़िंदगी रही, उनकी माँ की ज़िंदगी रही। तो 18 जून को ही उन्होंने 100 साल पूरे किए हैं। तो वो बात भी उसी समय 6 महीने पहले उनसे मिलना हुआ था। और उसके बाद अब जब चुनाव थे सेकंड फेज़ के, उस समय पर 5 दिसंबर को उनसे मुलाकात हुई थी। तो जितनी कोशिश हो सकती है, जब भी पीएम यहाँ पर आते हैं तो वो कोशिश करते हैं कि माँ के साथ, उनकी माँ के साथ वो समय बिताए, और अपने व्यस्त कार्यक्रम में भी वो थोड़ा समय निकाल ही लेते हैं और हीराबा के साथ समय बिताते हैं, चाहे थोड़ा ही समय हो, लेकिन वो जाते ज़रूर हैं। वो उससे पहले भी आपने देखा कि हीराबा को एक बार 7 LKM यहाँ पर प्रधानमंत्री खुद रहते हैं, वहाँ पर भी वो ले गए थे। और वो तस्वीरें भी उस समय आपको याद होगी कि उन्होंने वो तस्वीरें भी साझा की थी पीएम ने, कि किस तरीके से पीएम वहाँ पर गए और पीएम के साथ उन्होंने समय बिताया था। तो आज भी पीएम, वो हर माँ का बेटा होता है जो हर माँ का ख्याल रखता है, वो बिल्कुल उसी तरीके से जब माँ की तबीयत नासाज लगी तो पीएम खुद यहाँ पर आए और अभी उनकी जो पूरी जानकारी है उनकी हेल्थ बुलेटिन की, वो अभी जो आर के पटेल डीन उनसे ले जा रही है।
जी बिल्कुल जनक, for the moment thank you so much for getting us the latest. The Prime Minister is still there checking up on his mother who's admitted in the Ahmedabad hospital. Before now, we're shifting focus to what's happening in our neighborhood, specifically our neighbor China. China is on the verge of a complete collapse, many would say, especially as far as the COVID-19 crisis is concerned. There have been media reports across the last few weeks of over 5,000 deaths being recorded on an everyday basis. Morgues and hospitals are overburdened. Videos that are surfacing every single day show the crumbling state of medical infrastructure in the country. And due to this dire situation, there's a limited supply of medication and a steep rise in the prices. That is now forcing Chinese nationals to turn to the black market for Indian drugs, with appeals being made on social media platforms as well. Topics like anti-COVID generic drugs have been trending on social media in China, with users exchanging messages on how to get a hold of these medicines, many of which are being sold on the dark web, are being sold illegally in the country. And yet, China officially denies any such resurgence of the pandemic. They, in fact, are lifting their curbs, going on to put on a picture of how everything seems to be all right, but it's quite the contrary.
We are seeing that there is in fact a black market which is going on where Indian generic medicines are being sold illegally. How do you see all this as an expert?
So it is very important, for China to understand what all are their drug requirements from the systems perspective, and they should, kind of work on with which drugs they are, approving as per the guidelines. The guidelines are quite standard. So if the drugs are there from India and they are being sold in black market, it is not correct. It is illegal. Number two is that even Indian government can take an action with regard to that. And it is something like we have Act for Narcotics also. So it has to be looked at in that perspective. And even our own people have got to be warned with regard to this part that, we should not be selling these drugs illegally. But then, if China is in need of drugs, basically, you see, it is one world, one health. So we have to help them out with the official memorandum of understanding.
Abhishek, my colleague, now joins us more on this. Abhishek, we've seen over the last few days the kind of videos that have been surfacing where bodies are being piled up. The health infrastructure clearly is taking a toll there, even though China on the face of it seems to say all is well.
So it looks like limited supply and steep price of the approved drugs in China, that is two approved drugs that Chinese government has approved for COVID treatment, has given rise to this black marketing. That is bringing drugs from Indian markets and selling them in dark web or some through black market, because the Indian generic version of the two antiviral drug that Chinese government has approved comes at almost like 70 to 80% cheaper than what is officially being available there. However, selling Indian generic drugs in black market is very punishable offense, but still, since the demand is very high and availability is very low, people are opting and going for these resources to have as much of medicine, because we have seen kind of situation that is in China. Hospitals are full, patients are not getting adequate medical facility because of the overwhelming number of patients into the hospitals. ICUs are full. So people are trying to take care of themselves, having medicine at home only. And in this scenario, Indian generic medicine, which is coming at a very cheaper price and is also being made available in black market, is coming very handy for people in China to deal with this current crisis that is going on.
Right, Abhishek, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that. China seems to be imploding as far as the COVID-19 crisis is concerned. The latest crisis that it seems to be facing is that there aren't enough drugs, or what is available is very expensive, and which is why the black market there seems to be booming. And India is now seeming to come to the rescue of the Chinese nationals, because it's Indian drugs that are turning out to be the saviors for all of these Chinese nationals that are reeling under this COVID crisis. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, chairperson of the Center for Social Medicine and Community Health of JNU and a member of the National COVID Task Force here in India, joins us on this broadcast. So thank you so much for speaking with us. As far as China's condition at the moment is concerned, there's not one variant. There are multiple variants is what many are also saying, which is why we're seeing a resurgence in the cases there. There's also the thing about vaccines and how two of their vaccines are far less effective than the kind of vaccines that we have administered here in India, which is perhaps why we're seeing not only the kind of resurgence, but the desperation in the people there to lay their hands on any sort of generic drugs that they can manage to get.
Yes, thank you. The situation in China, as it seems from a plethora of media reports, from all international channels, is that not just the surge, but the fact that the preparedness seems to be wanting. and that basic drugs are in shortage or being rationed. And what you just reported is really an outcome or a marker of that. As far as vaccines go, yes, the Chinese vaccines that were indigenously developed in that country were inducted into the program quite early, most likely based on the initial variants that caused the first set of cases in China. And add to that the zero COVID policy that China very rigidly implemented actually meant that the population there was not exposed to the virus or the various strains as they evolved, which is what we have experienced in India, plus of course a very robust vaccination program.
Absolutely. As far as this illegal black market of drugs is concerned, Dr. Rajiv Das Gupta, we know that it's available on the dark web. It's not just as far as COVID-19 drugs or China is concerned. This is a pattern that we've seen across the world as well. As far as Indian drugs in the black market in China is concerned, now India has always maintained that whenever any country, including China, wants our help, we're ready to do so. But China has never officially asked us for it. So as far as the illegality of this whole matter goes, China, of course, perhaps will be taking punitive action because, like I said, it's illegal there. But can India be doing something about it?
Yes, the entire COVID pandemic for the last 3 years now almost, we have seen a great deal of cooperation across the world, whether it's in terms of research or vaccines or medicines or other supplies. And countries have constantly helped each other, continue to do so. And particularly as the case of China goes, on one hand, we seem to have a deficit of information coming out of China, whether it's in number of cases or the kinds of variants. But also at the same time, as we know, India has now taken over the presidency of G20. China is also a member state, and there's a whole range of steps being taken for pandemic preparedness, for cooperation on that matter. And therefore, this is a very important moment for India and China to, particularly for India to support China at this point. But that's, of course, subject to a more open dialogue.
Absolutely. Dialogue needs to take place, but that would mean that China actually has to admit that there is a crisis. And that seems like a long shot at the moment because China seems to say that there's absolutely nothing wrong. There is no resurgence of the pandemic, even though there are videos and testimonies that are coming every single day out on social media talking about the kind of crumbling infrastructure that the country faces. Dr. Das Gupta, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18 because China seems to be imploding. But China does not seem to care as far as telling the world about it is concerned. Because even though there seems to be a resurgence of COVID-19 cases, on the other hand, the Chinese government has lifted restrictions which could only possibly worsen the situation. CNN's Selena Wong gets us more details.
China is making a major move towards ending the country's nearly 3 years of isolation. China is dropping quarantine for all international arrivals from January 8th and promising to gradually restart outbound tourism for Chinese citizens. Inbound travelers still need to get a 48-hour negative COVID test before boarding, but they've dropped all of the other cumbersome requirements. To understand why these changes are such a big deal, we have to look at what the reality has been in China during the pandemic. The country has been severely limiting who can go in and out of the country with strict border controls. Flights have been very limited and expensive. All arrivals had to go through quarantine and government facilities. This new change would effectively also end the ban on Chinese citizens from going overseas for non-essential reasons. But the timing is still unclear. Authorities have not said when they'll restart issuing tourist visas or allowing foreigners to apply for business, study, or family reunion visas. Authorities in India said the guidelines are aimed at ensuring COVID does not spread as quickly as it has been in China.
With that, it's time for a quick break here on this edition of Nation at 5. But lots more lined up for you on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
I'm crossing over to News 18, Sachin, who is joining us live from Manali. Sachin, आप मौसम और तापमान के बारे में और बता सकते हैं?
जी हाँ, देखिए अगर मैं बात करूं इसमें हिमाचल प्रदेश और खासकर कुल्लू मनाली के मौसम की, तो यहाँ पर जो इसमें लगातार जो ठंड का प्रकोप लगातार जारी है। जिस तरह अगर मैं बात करूं अभी के तापमान की, अगर मैं बात करूं मनाली की, तो आज का जो न्यूनतम तापमान है वो -5 डिग्री के करीब जो है मनाली का तापमान यहाँ पर जो है दर्ज किया गया। हालांकि जिस तरह लंबे अरसे से यहाँ पर जो इस बार बर्फबारी नहीं हुई, लेकिन बीते 2 दिन पहले जो मनाली के ऊपरी क्षेत्रों में जो बर्फबारी हुई थी, उसके कारण जो एक एक घाटी में ठंड काफी ज्यादा बढ़ चुकी है और ऐसे में शुष्क ठंड इसमें काफी ज्यादा, और इससे ठंड से बचने के लिए लोग यहाँ पर जो है गर्म कपड़ों सहित जो अलाव का सहारा यहाँ पर लेते हुए नजर आ रहे हैं। हालांकि इस बार जो है जिस तरह जो एक उम्मीद होती थी बर्फबारी की, वो यहाँ पर नहीं होने के कारण भी इस बार जो है लगातार ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है और आने वाले दिनों में ये अंदेशा जताया जा रहा है कि यदि जल्द से जल्द घाटी में यहाँ पे बर्फबारी नहीं होती तो उससे कहीं ना कहीं और ज्यादा ठंड यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ सकती है। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं हिमाचल प्रदेश की जो जिला लाहौल स्पीति है, जिसे जो है कोल्ड रेगिस्तान के नाम से भी जाना जाता है, वहां पर भी जो है तापमान जो है -15 डिग्री के करीब जो वहां पर जो पहुंच चुका, और इसके साथ ही जो बहने वाले नदी नाले और झरने हैं वो भी वहां पर जो है जमने आरंभ हो चुके हैं। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं जिस तरह जो ये मौसम लगातार जो यहाँ पर बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, ऐसे में सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत जो यहाँ के जो लोग हैं, बाशिंदे हैं, उन्हें आ रही है, क्योंकि शुष्क ठंड के चलते जो लोग यहाँ पर जो है सर्दी जुकाम की जो काफी शिकायतें आ रही है, और जो खासकर यहाँ के जो अस्पताल है वहां पर जो मरीजों की जो काफी ज्यादा लंबी लाइनें देखने को मिल रही है। और इसके साथ ही जिस तरह जो है न्यू ईयर भी है, और ऐसे में न्यू ईयर को लेकर जो काफी सारे पर्यटक जो है कुल्लू मनाली का रुख कर रहे हैं, और ऐसे में सभी को उम्मीद है कि जल्द से जल्द जो घाटी में बर्फबारी हो। लेकिन जिस तरह मौसम बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, तो ऐसे में कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भी कुछ निराशा है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जो दिक्कत यहाँ पे आ रही है वो जो है इस ठंड के कारण जो है सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत ये है कि इससे जो है जिसे हिमाचल जो फलों के लिए भी जाना जाता है, खासकर सेब के लिए, तो उस सेब की फसल पर भी जो है इसका यहाँ पर जो असर साफ देखा जा रहा है, क्योंकि बर्फ ना होने के कारण जो है चीलिंग आवर जो होते हैं सेब के लिए वो जो यहाँ पर पूरे नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, वो भी एक सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत। और यदि इस बार जो है बर्फबारी यदि कम मात्रा में होती तो इसका सीधा असर जो आगे आने वाले गर्मियों के दिनों में जो देखने को मिलेगा, क्योंकि जितनी कम बर्फबारी जो है पहाड़ों पर होगी उससे जो है पानी का संकट भी यहाँ पर जो है खड़ा हो सकता है। ऐसे में सभी ये उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि जल्द से जल्द जो है बर्फबारी हो और उसके जो है यहाँ के जो यहाँ की जो टूरिज्म है, उसके साथ जो यहाँ की फसलें हैं, उसे उसका जो फायदा जो है इन चीजों को भी यहाँ पर जो मिल सके। लेकिन बात में अभी ठंड की भी करूं तो ठंड का जो है लगातार कहर यहाँ पे जारी है। सुबह और शाम के समय जो है तापमान में खासी गिरावट यहाँ पर देखी जा रही है। हालांकि दोपहर के समय जो मौसम साफ है, जिस तरह आप मेरे पीछे ठीक तस्वीरों में देखते हैं इसमें कि मौसम बिल्कुल साफ है और धूप जो पहाड़ों पे खिल चुकी है, तो आप इससे अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि इस तरह जो मौसम यहाँ पे चल रहा है। दोपहर के समय जो तापमान में जो बढ़ोतरी बेशक यहाँ पे देखी जा रही है, तो दोपहर का जो तापमान है वो 15 से 20 डिग्री के करीब जो यहाँ पे पहुंच रहा है, लेकिन जो सुबह और शाम का तापमान है उसमें जो है यहाँ पर खासी गिरावट देखी जा रही है। और मनाली में जिस तरह मैं बात कर रहा हूँ कि मनाली में 5 डिग्री का जो है आज का न्यूनतम तापमान जो यहाँ पर जो अभी का दर्ज किया गया, और इसके साथ ही लाहौल स्पीति में -15 से 20 डिग्री का तापमान वो जो है वहां पर जो दर्ज किया गया। तो इससे आप अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि किस तरह सुबह और शाम के समय जो किस तरह जो यहाँ पर जो लगातार जो ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है। जी
सचिन जी, शुक्रिया हमें वो डिटेल्स देने के लिए और वो विजुअल्स दिखाने के लिए। I'm also going to be crossing over to Shireen, to CNN News 18's Shireen Elizabeth, who's also joining us live from Delhi. Shireen, tell us where you are, tell us about the conditions there, because what the IMD has predicted is dense to very dense fog. Tell us more about the situation around you.
Well, today it is in fact much better than what the situation in past 2 days were. There is no much fog here. You can clearly see from here where I am standing at Vijay Chowk. The Rashtrapati Bhavan is in fact visible. There is a bit of fog here. For the past 2 days, we have seen how the temperature was about 5 degree to yesterday it was 7 degree, but today right now it is about 10 degree and the sun is also out. So comparatively to the last 2 days, the situation in the national capital is much better. Though the IMD has predicted that the fog will last for about 48 hours. Today as well was supposed to be foggy, but the situation on ground looks much better though.
Welcome back. The national capital continues to shiver as minimum temperatures fell below what hill stations like Dehradun, Dharamshala and Nainital usually experience. Now, Delhi recorded a minimum temperature of 5.6 degrees yesterday, which is a notch below normal, whereas Dehradun recorded 7 degrees, Dharamshala recorded 6.2 degrees and Nainital recorded 7.2 degrees Celsius. Now, the Indian Meteorological Department has predicted cold to severe cold conditions for parts of North India over the next 2 days. The Weather Department has also said that parts of Uttarakhand, Delhi, Chandigarh, Haryana, Punjab and western Rajasthan will continue to experience dense to very dense fog.
ठंड बहुत पड़ रही है साहब। ठंड का मान है, देखो हाथ की कांकरी हो रही है। ठंड काम भी कौन दिक्कत सका। ठंड का मान है, बहुत ज़्यादा ठंड पड़ रही है। सुबह पहाड़ जम जाए और ठंड का मान फसल भी खराब हो रही है साहब।
अपने होटल है सर्किल पर, तो बाहर देखो ठंड को मौसम हो रहा है ज़्यादा, मैं के कारण टरकाड़ा बस वाला रुककर चाय पानी पीवे।
थोड़ी सी फसलों में नुकसान है। सुबह कोहरा छाया हुआ रहता है और हमारी फसल पर बर्फ़ सी जमी होती है, सुबह सुबह फसल का बहुत ही नुकसान होता है।
I'm crossing over to News 18, Sachin, who is joining us live from Manali. Sachin, आप मौसम और तापमान के बारे में और बता सकते हैं?
जी हाँ, देखिए अगर मैं बात करूँ इसमें हिमाचल प्रदेश और खासकर कुल्लू मनाली के मौसम की, तो यहाँ पर जो इसमें लगातार जो ठंड का प्रकोप लगातार जारी है। जिस तरह अगर मैं बात करूँ अभी के तापमान की, अगर मैं बात करूँ मनाली के, तो आज के जो न्यूनतम तापमान है वो -5 डिग्री के करीब जो है मनाली का तापमान यहाँ पर जो है दर्ज किया गया। हालांकि जिस तरह लंबे अरसे से यहाँ पर जो इस बार बर्फबारी नहीं हुई, लेकिन बीते 2 दिन पहले जो मनाली के ऊपरी क्षेत्रों में जो बर्फबारी हुई थी, उसके कारण जो एक घाटी में ठंड काफी ज्यादा बढ़ चुकी है और ऐसे में शुष्क ठंड इसमें काफी ज्यादा, और इससे ठंड से बचने के लिए लोग यहाँ पर जो है गर्म कपड़ों सहित जो अलाव का सहारा यहाँ पर लेते हुए नजर आ रहे हैं। हालांकि इस बार जो है जिस तरह से जो एक उम्मीद होती थी बर्फबारी की, वो यहाँ पर नहीं होने के कारण भी इस बार जो है लगातार ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है और आने वाले दिनों में ये अंदेशा जताया जा रहा है कि यदि जल्द से जल्द घाटी में यहाँ पे बर्फबारी नहीं होती तो उससे कहीं ना कहीं और ज्यादा ठंड यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ सकती है। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं हिमाचल प्रदेश की जो जिला लाहौल स्पीति है, जिसे जो है कोल्ड रेगिस्तान के नाम से भी जाना जाता है, वहां पर भी जो है तापमान जो है -15 डिग्री के करीब जो वहां पर जो पहुंच चुका, और इसके साथ ही जो बहने वाले नदी नाले और झरने हैं वो भी वहां पर जो है जमने आरंभ हो चुके हैं। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं जिस तरह जो ये मौसम लगातार जो यहाँ पर बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, ऐसे में सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत जो यहाँ के जो लोग हैं, बाशिंदे हैं, उन्हें आ रही है, क्योंकि शुष्क ठंड के चलते जो लोग यहाँ पर जो है सर्दी जुकाम की जो काफी शिकायतें आ रही है, और जो खासकर यहाँ के जो अस्पताल है वहां पर जो मरीजों की जो काफी ज्यादा लंबी लाइनें देखने को मिल रही है। और इसके साथ ही जिस तरह जो है न्यू ईयर भी है, और ऐसे में न्यू ईयर को लेकर जो काफी सारे पर्यटक जो है कुल्लू मनाली का रुख कर रहे हैं, और ऐसे में सभी को उम्मीद है कि जल्द से जल्द जो घाटी में बर्फबारी हो। लेकिन जिस तरह मौसम बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, तो ऐसे में कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भी कुछ निराशा है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जो दिक्कत यहाँ पे आ रही है वो जो है इस ठंड के कारण जो है सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत ये है कि इससे जो है
Welcome back. You're watching Nation at 5, and these are visuals coming in from Ahmedabad, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just left the UN Mehta Hospital after visiting his ailing mother, who was hospitalized this morning. She was complaining of shortness of breath, which is why she was taken for checkup there to the UN Mehta Hospital in Ahmedabad by her son, who lives with her, Prime Minister Modi's younger brother. Prime Minister Modi this afternoon decided to fly to Ahmedabad to visit his ailing mother. He's just about leaving the hospital there. Whether he's going to be staying in Ahmedabad for a longer time, or is he on his way back to the national capital, we are still gathering more details of that. We're also expecting a health bulletin to be released by the hospital shortly. Siddhant, my colleague, is joining us for more on this. Siddhant, for now, Hirabaz's condition is believed to be stable. Is the Prime Minister going to be staying in Ahmedabad today, or is he returning back to the national capital?
So yes, absolutely stable. Her health condition is absolutely stable. In fact, Prime Minister was there at the hospital for almost an hour, and he was there along with the other senior ministers of Gujarat government and in fact the family members of both the brothers of Prime Minister. They have also reached the hospital, so the entire family was there at the hospital. Now we can confirm this for our viewers that right now Hirabai is reacting to the treatment which is being given to them. Second, she is stable and she is recovering. So Prime Minister has left the hospital, and we really don't know that what is going to be the Prime Minister's schedule. Is he going to stay in Ahmedabad and again be visiting the hospital, or he's going to come back to the national capital? That is something which we will check and get confirmation for our viewers. But right now, Prime Minister was there with his mother for almost an hour, and now he's leaving the Mehta Hospital in Ahmedabad. Back to you.
Right, Siddhant, we were also given to understand that the Chief Minister was there before the Prime Minister arrived. There was also the Health Minister of the state who was at the hospital when the Prime Minister was there. Are they still there? Are they still taking stock, speaking with the hospital authorities, or have they left as well?
Well, look, Chief Minister was the first person to reach the hospital. The time he got to know, he was the first one to reach the hospital. Then Parimal Nathwani and the other senior leaders of Gujarat also did reach hospital before Prime Minister arrived. And they, after meeting the doctors and after meeting the family members, they all left. Then Prime Minister arrived. Prime Minister was there for almost an hour. He met the doctors, and in fact, Prime Minister was briefed by the doctors regarding the health
of Hiraba. Each and every details were shared with him, and he was also told that Hiraba is responding to the treatment. She's stable. There's nothing to worry. Absolutely nothing to worry. And after which Prime Minister left the hospital. So as I was discussing it with you before, that we are still trying to get a confirmation that his Prime Minister is going to come back to the national capital. Is he going to stay there in Ahmedabad for a day till his mother completely recovers? That is something which we are still trying to get confirmation from the Prime Minister's office. But right now, he was there next to his mother. And yes, at the government level also there in Gujarat, the government is making sure that the best treatment is provided to Hiraba. And this is actually not for the first time that Hiraba has been admitted to the hospital in 2016. And in fact, in the past also on multiple occasions, whenever she had some issue or she suffered, she had some issues or she had complained regarding some problems, then she was taken to hospital for the treatment. So yes, and the Prime Minister makes sure that his mother gets the best treatment, whatever is needed. So this time around also, he made sure in the morning that she gets the best treatment. Then he himself took a flight and went to Ahmedabad to see his mother. So that bond is very clear actually. And each time around Prime Minister is in Ahmedabad, he visits his mother. And on various platforms, he has spoken about the bond that he shares with his mother. And big credit for it.
Right, we'll try and re-establish that link with my colleague Siddhant there. But for now, we can tell you that Prime Minister's mother's condition is stable. And the Prime Minister has left the hospital in Ahmedabad. Whether he returns to the national capital or stays in Ahmedabad for a day or two, we'll get you more details on that. But for now, there is no reason to worry and her condition is stable, is what the hospital has come out and said. Let's now get you a CNN News 18 super exclusive news break. There seems to be an attempt to revive the separatist movement in Punjab. Intelligence sources have highlighted the resurgence of such campaigns in the state in the recent past. And Amritpal Singh, a 29-year-old Sikh preacher who draws inspiration from pro-Khalistani Bhindranwale, seems to now be creating an atmosphere of disquiet by raising the bogey of Khalistan yet again. Let me break it down for you and tell you how exactly he is doing so. Amritpal Singh launched the Khalsa Wahir campaign not long ago. He launched that campaign in November 2022 from Amritsar, from the Akal Takht Sahib. He announced weapon marches as part of this campaign. He wanted all of those people to participate in these weapon marches and to join in an open display of arms, including swords and guns as well. He wanted anyone who disrespected the Guru Granth Sahib to be killed. He made that call while he launched that particular campaign. He also declared protests at the Singhu border over release of Khalistani or Sikh prisoners that have been in jails across the country. He says it is going to be on the lines of the farmer agitation at the Singhu border, which we saw last year. And he has given a call for those kind of protests as well. Now, there is crackdown that is happening as we speak. The latest we know is that some of his social media accounts have also now been banned. They've been put on hold by the Indian government after concerns were raised, the kind of incendiary remarks that he was making, calling for secession or calling for a separate state for Sikhs of Khalistan. But the threat is real and the Punjab government also needs to be acting on it. There needs to be a synergy between the state government and national agencies. Joining me on this broadcast is Senior Fellow of the ORF, Sushant Sareen, Senior Journalist Hemant Atri also with me, and former DGP of Punjab, Shashikant, is also on this broadcast. And Mr. Shashikant, I'd like to begin with you. As far as this resurgence seems to be being orchestrated on ground there in Punjab, in the last 1 month or so, since November, since this particular campaign was launched by Amritpal Singh, we've already seen the kind of disturbance on ground. There have been violence or violent attempts at Gurudwaras, at several other community centers as well.
Yeah, I had joined Punjab Police way back in mid-70s. There's an English word or the French word, déjà vu. Whatever is happening in Punjab takes me back to mid-70s when this kind of thing had just commenced, had just started. The same kind of incendiary remarks as you rightly mentioned. I'm talking of killing persons, maybe they are premis or those who disrespect Guru Granth Sahib and this kind of things. A call to carry weapons along with, because they say there is an integral part of this, their right. Okay, I don't know about that, whether it's right or not. But I've seen this kind of atmosphere building up in mid-70s. And unfortunately, I fear, I dread, I'm scared, and I ask my questions, are we walking the same path? Thank you.
Right, and Sushant Sareen, that's really the worry. We've seen the kind of havoc this kind of movement has wreaked a few decades ago, and we cannot have a redux of that.
But that's precisely what we're having. And the problem is that nobody is asking the question, where does this guy, who's a nobody, where does this guy suddenly land up from and then suddenly start taking control of a movement which had virtually vanished? And nobody's saying anything. Nobody's doing anything about it. He seems to have got a free pass. The Punjab government under the Aam Aadmi Party seems to be winking and nudging at him, not doing anything to stop him, doing some cosmetic stuff. The central government also seems to be completely nonplussed by what is happening. And where does this guy come from? Who was Deep Sidhu? He was a third-rate actor who had, who nobody knew until this movement started, this farmers movement started. Nobody knew about him. He was a non-entity, and suddenly some obscure organization which he started has come onto the center stage in Punjab. Then we have seen that over the last few years, as the former DGP is telling us, over the last few years, we've seen a spate of incidents taking place. Everybody is sleepwalking into a disaster. So the questions need to be asked. Why is nobody taking any action against this hate monger? Why is nobody stepping up to the plate and shutting this down before it becomes a monster that we can't control? Why is such a long rope being given to these characters? While we know that in Punjab, that if you actually start cracking down hard on some of these elements, they will just fizzle out completely. And yet there is this kind of tolerance which is completely inexplicable. It's bewildering what is happening in Punjab. And the state is going to the dogs. The economy has gone for a 6. Anybody with any means is leaving the state. People are voting with their feet. The Aam Aadmi Party government seems to be completely at sea. They don't know what to do apart from giving freebies for which they have no money. I think we are already in the middle of a disaster in the making. And of course, you have the Pakistanis playing with fire. So that is where we are at.
Absolutely. And Mr. Shashikant, like Sushant Sareen was also pointing out that the threat is there. The state government seems to be faltering. But there is a window of opportunity to crack down, because from what we learn is that there isn't a lot of support that this man seems to be getting on ground, especially after the recent spate of violence that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Opinion on ground is also divided, because the self-proclaimed messiah of the Sikh community is not something that people actually resonate with. So there is a window of opportunity for crackdown by the state government, by the central government as well, by the agencies. And yet for some reason that doesn't seem to be happening.
I'll just make I'll just say one sentence before I go on to that. Look, situation in mid-70s was exactly the same. We had terrorists, we have terrorists. We had money, they had money, now they have drugs, which again gets translated into money. They had antisocial elements, now we have gangsters. Now the top of it, this particular thing is coming up as if it's a cult. Of course, it's a not cult, but that's what they're trying to give it to a religious color also, like it was in mid-70s. And to make the matters worse, it appears like Mr. Sareen has rightly pointed out that there is no effort either on the part of any of the governments that exist here to control the situation. And mark my words, if the situation is not controlled immediately, God forbid, it may get out of the hands because Punjab is already on the boiling point. Thank you.
Right, and Hemant, yes, Mr. Sareen, go ahead.
Poonam, I think it has already reached the tipping point. Even if we were now to crack down, I suspect that there will be a lot of violence, even at this stage, because whatever else you might say, it might not be a very popular movement and all of that, but it does have a certain body of people who are supporting it, and they will resort to violence, partly because they are gangsters, partly because they are drug pushers, partly for a number of other ideological and political reasons. But whatever violence we will see if a crackdown happens now will be a fraction of the violence we will see if there is no crackdown right now. And we wait for another 6 months, 1 year or 2 years before, the whole hell breaks loose and the proverbial hits the fan. And then we start ducking for cover. There will be a lot more violence this time, which will put what happened in the 80s and 90s to shame. So if I was to advise the government, both in Punjab as well as in the center, I would say if there is a time to crack down, that time is now. You will have violence, you will have pushback, you will have the New York Times and the Washington Post and the rest of these rags, pointing fingers at you that India is not a democracy, human rights, etc., etc. But you will limit the damage if you do something right now. But if you wait, then you will be responsible for what will happen. And this is both the guys sitting in Delhi as well as the guys sitting in Chandigarh.
So what exactly, Hemant Attari, is stopping the Punjab government? Because like I said, just in the recent past, we've seen several instances of violence. Pakistan, of course, always wanting to fish in troubled waters. And they've been trying to do so in nexus. The ISI and the Khalisani nexus, again, no secret, has been trying to carry out these attacks in the last couple of months as well. What seems to be stopping the Punjab government? Are they just not equipped to deal with this? Do they not see the seriousness of the issue? Or like Sushant Sareen was pointing out, it's the fallout that they are more worried about, and which is why they don't seem to be wanting to take that first step.
No, Poonamji, I fully agree with all the three points that you have said. Punjab government basically lacks willpower as far as tackling this nuisance is concerned. See, one has to understand the point. There are three contours to the present problem. First of all, why in the first place Punjab government allowed this gentleman to carry this campaign, whatever he is running for last say about a month or so? Why they are allowing him? A person as per the Indian Constitution who is openly calling for beheading somebody involved in the sacrilege. What does it mean? He is playing with the fire and he is playing with the law, number one. Number two, he is coming out with all those weapons in processions, meaning thereby he is, inflating the so-called emotions and sentiments of the Sikh youths, particularly. And number three, the most important is, ISI is also very, very desperate in flaming some kind of terrorism in Punjab as well as in Jammu and Kashmir. They are not able to do as of now, but they are fully prepared. Yesterday also, if you recollect, what has been done in Tarn, they have received a ready-to-use, they have just, grabbed one ready-to-use RPG yesterday from the riverbed. It was ready to use. And 15 days back, in the Sahali police station, the same was fired, the another RPG. So the thing is, what for Punjab police is waiting? They are waiting for a big, nuisance to be created. And second thing, they have to understand, Punjab youth, they are terribly unemployed. There is a social contour to it also. Not only tracking this man out, take him with a strong head, also they have to, address the issue of unemployment. See, most of the youth in Punjab, immediately after doing the +2 or graduation, they are looking for greener pastures in Canada, Australia, or Britain or somewhere. And these are the people who are catch them young. And the same strategy is there. Yesterday, Punjab police in Tarn arrested 3 guys. All are from 21 to 22 years age group, right? And the previous the RPG attack, which was there on the police station, 3 of them were, minors. So Punjab police has to understand, the Punjab government has to understand the nuances of the whole issue. They are getting the youngsters who are unemployed, and easy money is there, narcotic money is there, gangsters are there, everything is available in jails. What for Punjab police is waiting? See, ISI is desperation. And this gentleman who is spearheading all this campaign, he retired from Dubai after 10 years. And he didn't come directly from Dubai to India. He went to Georgia first. What for he was there? And then going back to Dubai and then coming back to India. And for a very little known organization like Waris Punjab Day, now there are 3,000 active members. Don't the Punjab police understand, or the Punjab government for that matter doesn't understand the big nuance of it? This is going to be a big mess. If they don't come very, they have to get them out, all of them, and take them head on. Otherwise, this is going to be a big menace, I'm telling you this.
Absolutely. And Mr. Shashikant, you've been part of the force there. To anyone who here's the kind of commentary this man has been making, would agree with you and me that there are several provisions in the law which can be used to put him in jail. Just
In
this
fact,
most
there's an
recent
entire
instance,
law
and
book
yet we don't see that happening.
It's the entire law book there, not only the legal provisions, constitutional provisions, but the entire law book. Look, this is the situation which can be taken use or that can be made good use of by the government of India as well. I'm saying it very consciously and with also many very care. This guy is saying that he wants to unite this part of India with whatever Pakistan, West Pakistan, which West Punjab has gone to that place. ISI is playing a dirty game. They are trying, at this time, they are carefully trying to wash their hands off, saying that this has not been propped up by them because he's asking for merger of that West Punjab with East Punjab along with other areas. So it's a very clever ploy, and this is about the time that government of India can take benefit of. And this rag, this New York Times and this Times and Ministry International, etc., it can be given a diplomatic cover and throw the law book at him. Throw the law book at him. There are thousands of provisions. It can be controlled. Control it right now, otherwise it'll be too late. Thank you.
Absolutely. It is the need of the hour, and there needs to be a synergy between the state government and the central agencies to ensure a crackdown happens sooner than later. This man that you see on your screens is no innocent leader who seems to be preaching to his community. He definitely is inciting passions, and that is something that needs to be contained. I thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us here on this broadcast as we bring this super exclusive to our viewers. But with that, it's time for a quick break. Back in just a few minutes. Do stay tuned.
Sachin, who is joining us live from Manali. Sachin, आप मौसम और तापमान के बारे में और बता सकते हैं?
जी हाँ, देखिए अगर मैं बात करूं इसमें हिमाचल प्रदेश और खासकर कुल्लू मनाली के मौसम की, तो यहाँ पर जो इसमें लगातार जो ठंड का प्रकोप लगातार जारी है। जिस तरह अगर मैं बात करूं अभी के तापमान की, अगर मैं बात करूं मनाली के, तो आज का जो न्यूनतम तापमान है वो -5 डिग्री के करीब जो है मनाली का तापमान यहाँ पर जो है दर्ज किया गया। हालांकि जिस तरह लंबे अरसे से यहाँ पर जो इस बार बर्फबारी नहीं हुई, लेकिन बीते 2 दिन पहले जो मनाली के ऊपरी क्षेत्रों में जो बर्फबारी हुई थी, उसके कारण जो एक घाटी में ठंड काफी ज्यादा बढ़ चुकी है और ऐसे में शुष्क ठंड इसमें काफी ज्यादा, और इससे ठंड से बचने के लिए लोग यहाँ पर जो है गर्म कपड़ों सहित जो अलाव का सहारा यहाँ पर लेते हुए नजर आ रहे हैं। हालांकि इस बार जो है जिस तरह जो एक उम्मीद होती थी बर्फबारी की, वो यहाँ पर नहीं होने के कारण भी इस बार जो है लगातार ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है और आने वाले दिनों में ये अंदेशा जताया जा रहा है कि यदि जल्द से जल्द घाटी में यहाँ पे बर्फबारी नहीं होती तो उससे कहीं ना कहीं और ज्यादा ठंड यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ सकती है। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं हिमाचल प्रदेश की जो जिला लाहौल स्पीति है, जिसे जो है कोल्ड रेगिस्तान के नाम से भी जाना जाता है, वहां पर भी जो है तापमान जो है -15 डिग्री के करीब जो वहां पर जो पहुंच चुका, और इसके साथ ही जो बहने वाले नदी नाले और झरने हैं वो भी वहां पर जो है जमने आरंभ हो चुके हैं। इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं जिस तरह जो ये मौसम लगातार जो यहाँ पर बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, ऐसे में सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत जो यहाँ के जो लोग हैं, बाशिंदे हैं, उन्हें आ रही है, क्योंकि शुष्क ठंड के चलते जो लोग यहाँ पर जो है सर्दी जुकाम की जो काफी शिकायतें आ रही है, और जो खासकर यहाँ के जो अस्पताल है वहां पर जो मरीजों की जो काफी ज्यादा लंबी लाइनें देखने को मिल रही है। और इसके साथ ही जिस तरह जो है न्यू ईयर भी है, और ऐसे में न्यू ईयर को लेकर जो काफी सारे पर्यटक जो है कुल्लू मनाली का रुख कर रहे हैं, और ऐसे में सभी को उम्मीद है कि जल्द से जल्द जो घाटी में बर्फबारी हो। लेकिन जिस तरह मौसम बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, तो ऐसे में कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भी कुछ निराशा है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जो दिक्कत यहाँ पे आ रही है वो जो है इस ठंड के कारण जो है सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत ये है कि इससे जो है, जिसे हिमाचल जो फलों के लिए भी जाना जाता है, खासकर सेब के लिए, तो उस सेब की फसल पर भी जो है इसका यहाँ पर जो असर साफ देखा जा रहा है, क्योंकि बर्फ ना होने के कारण जो है चीलिंग आवर जो होते हैं सेब के लिए वो जो यहाँ पर पूरे नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, वो भी एक सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत। और यदि इस बार जो है बर्फबारी यदि कम मात्रा में होती तो इसका सीधा असर जो आगे आने वाले गर्मियों के दिनों में जो देखने को मिलेगा, क्योंकि जितनी कम बर्फबारी जो है पहाड़ों पर होगी उससे जो है पानी का संकट भी यहाँ पर जो है खड़ा हो सकता है। ऐसे में सभी ये उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि जल्द से जल्द जो है बर्फबारी हो और उसके जो है यहाँ के जो यहाँ की जो टूरिज्म है, उसके साथ जो यहाँ की फसलें हैं, उसे उसका जो फायदा जो है इन चीजों को भी यहाँ पर जो मिल सके। लेकिन बात में अभी ठंड की भी करूं तो ठंड का जो है लगातार कहर यहाँ पे जारी है। सुबह और शाम के समय जो है तापमान में खासी गिरावट यहाँ पर देखी जा रही है। हालांकि दोपहर के समय जो मौसम साफ है, जिस तरह आप मेरे पीछे ठीक तस्वीर हम देखते हैं इसमें कि मौसम बिल्कुल साफ है और धूप जो पहाड़ों पे खिल चुकी है, तो आप इससे अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि इस तरह जो मौसम यहाँ पे चल रहा है। दोपहर के समय जो तापमान में जो बढ़ोतरी बेशक यहाँ पे देखी जा रही है, तो दोपहर का जो तापमान है वो 15 से 20 डिग्री के करीब जो यहाँ पे पहुंच रहा है, लेकिन जो सुबह और शाम का तापमान है उसमें जो है यहाँ पर खासी गिरावट देखी जा रही है। और मनाली में जिस तरह मैं बात कर रहा हूँ कि मनाली में 5 डिग्री का जो है आज का न्यूनतम तापमान जो यहाँ पर जो अभी का दर्ज किया गया, और इसके साथ ही लाहौल स्पीति में -15 से 20 डिग्री का तापमान वो जो है वहां पर जो दर्ज किया गया। तो इससे आप अंदेशा लगा सकते हैं कि किस तरह सुबह और शाम के समय जो किस तरह जो यहाँ पर जो लगातार जो ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है। जी
सचिन जी शुक्रिया हमें वो डिटेल्स देने के लिए और वो विजुअल्स दिखाने के लिए. I'm also going to be crossing over to Shireen, to CNN News 18's Shireen Elizabeth, who's also joining us live from Delhi. Shireen, tell us where you are. Tell us about the conditions there, because what the IMD has predicted is dense to very dense fog. Tell us more about the situation around you.
Well, today it is in fact much better than what the situation in past 2 days were. There is no much fog here. You can clearly see from here where I am standing at Vijay Chowk. The Rashtrapati Bhavan is in fact visible. There is a bit of fog here. For the past 2 days, we have seen how the temperature was about 5 degree to yesterday it was 7 degree, but today right now it is about 10 degree and the sun is also out. So comparatively to the last 2 days, the situation in the national capital is much better. Though the IMD has predicted that the fog will last for about 48 hours. Today as well was supposed to be foggy, but the situation on ground looks much better though.
Welcome back. The national capital continues to shiver as minimum temperatures fell below what hill stations like Dehradun, Dharamshala and Nainital usually experience. Now, Delhi recorded a minimum temperature of 5.6 degrees yesterday, which is a notch below normal, whereas Dehradun recorded 7 degrees, Dharamshala recorded 6.2 degrees and Nainital recorded 7.2 degrees Celsius. Now, the Indian Meteorological Department has predicted cold to severe cold conditions for parts of North India over the next 2 days. The Weather Department has also said that parts of Uttarakhand, Delhi, Chandigarh, Haryana, Punjab and western Rajasthan will continue to experience dense to very dense fog.
ठंड बहुत पड़ रही है साहब. ठंड का मान है, देखो हाथ की कांकरी हो रही है. ठंड काम भी कोई कर सका. ठंड का मान है, बहुत ज़्यादा ठंड पड़ रही है. सुबह पावड़ जम जाए और ठंड का मान फसल भी खराब हो रही है साहब.
अपने होटल है सर्किल पर, तो बाहर देखो ठंड को मौसम हो रहा है ज़्यादा, मैं के कारण टरकाला बस वाला रुककर चाय पानी पीवे.
थोड़ी सी फसलों में नुकसान है. सुबह कोहरा छाया हुआ रहता है और हमारी फसल पर बर्फ़ सी जमी होती है. सुबह फसल का बहुत ही नुकसान होता है.
I'm crossing over to News 18 Sachin, who is joining us live from Manali. Sachin, आप मौसम और तापमान के बारे में और बता सकते हैं?
जी हाँ, देखिए अगर मैं बात करूं इसमें हिमाचल प्रदेश और खासकर कुल्लू मनाली के मौसम की, तो यहाँ पर जो इसमें लगातार जो ठंड का प्रकोप लगातार जारी है. जिस तरह अगर मैं बात करूं अभी के तापमान की, अगर मैं बात करूं मनाली के, तो आज का जो न्यूनतम तापमान है वो -5 डिग्री के करीब जो है मनाली का तापमान यहाँ पर जो है दर्ज किया गया. हालांकि जिस तरह लंबे अरसे से यहाँ पर जो इस बार बर्फबारी नहीं हुई, लेकिन बीते 2 दिन पहले जो मनाली के ऊपरी क्षेत्रों में जो बर्फबारी हुई थी उसके कारण जो एक घाटी में ठंड काफी ज्यादा बढ़ चुकी है और ऐसे में शुष्क ठंड इसमें काफी ज्यादा, और इससे ठंड से बचने के लिए लोग यहाँ पर जो है गर्म कपड़ों सहित जो अलाव का सहारा यहाँ पर लेते हुए नजर आ रहे हैं. हालांकि इस बार जो है जिस तरह से एक उम्मीद होती थी बर्फबारी की, वो यहाँ पर नहीं होने के कारण भी इस बार जो है लगातार ठंड बढ़ती जा रही है और आने वाले दिनों में ये अंदेशा जताया जा रहा है कि यदि जल्द से जल्द घाटी में यहाँ पे बर्फबारी नहीं होती तो उससे कहीं ना कहीं और ज्यादा ठंड यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ सकती है. इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं हिमाचल प्रदेश की जो जिला लाहौल स्पीति है, जिसे जो है कोल्ड रेगिस्तान के नाम से भी जाना जाता है, वहां पर भी जो है तापमान जो है -15 डिग्री के करीब जो वहां पर जो पहुंच चुका, और इसके साथ ही जो बहने वाले नदी नाले और झरने हैं वो भी वहां पर जो है जमने आरंभ हो चुके हैं. इसके साथ ही अगर मैं बात करूं जिस तरह जो ये मौसम लगातार जो यहाँ पर बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है, ऐसे में सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत जो यहाँ के जो लोग हैं, बाशिंदे हैं, उन्हें आ रही है, क्योंकि शुष्क ठंड के चलते जो लोग यहाँ पर जो है सर्दी जुकाम की जो काफी शिकायतें आ रही है और जो खासकर यहाँ के जो अस्पताल है वहां पर जो मरीजों की जो काफी ज्यादा लंबी लाइनें देखने को मिल रही है. और इसके साथ ही जिस तरह जो है न्यू ईयर भी है और ऐसे में न्यू ईयर को लेकर जो काफी सारे पर्यटक जो है कुल्लू मनाली का रुख कर रहे हैं और ऐसे में सभी को उम्मीद है कि जल्द से जल्द जो घाटी में बर्फबारी हो. लेकिन जिस तरह मौसम बिल्कुल शुष्क बना हुआ है तो ऐसे में कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भी कुछ निराशा है. लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जो दिक्कत यहाँ पे आ रही है वो जो है इस ठंड के कारण जो है सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत ये है कि इससे जो है जिसे हिमाचल जो फलों के लिए भी जाना जाता है, खासकर सेब के लिए, तो उस सेब की फसल पर भी जो है इसका यहाँ पर जो असर साफ देखा जा रहा है, क्योंकि बर्फ ना होने के कारण जो है चीलिंग आवर जो होते हैं सेब के लिए वो जो यहाँ पर पूरे नहीं हो पा रहे हैं. वो भी एक सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत है. और यदि इस बार जो है बर्फबारी यदि कम मात्रा में होती तो इसका सीधा असर जो आगे आने वाले गर्मियों के दिनों में जो देखने को मिलेगा, क्योंकि जितनी कम
Welcome back. Prime Minister Modi is in Ahmedabad to visit his ailing mother Hiraba, who has been hospitalized. She was hospitalized this morning in the UN Mehta Hospital in Ahmedabad after she complained of shortness of breath. The hospital has released a medical bulletin saying that her condition is stable. Prime Minister Modi just a short while ago exited the UN Mehta Hospital after meeting his mother for about an hour and a half. He has now reached the airport, is what we're given to understand, expected to return to the national capital. Meanwhile, Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge and Congress leaders Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi Vadra took to social media and expressed their support to the Prime Minister, also wishing his mother a speedy recovery. BJP MP Jugal Singh Thakur, who was one of the BJP leaders who was at the hospital when the Prime Minister visited his mother, has now come out and said that Hiraba's condition is stable, it's good and improving, and she's likely to be discharged in the next 2 days.
स्वास्थ्य अच्छा है, नॉर्मली उम्र होती है तो दिक्कतें आती रहती है, पर उनकी अच्छी है, उनकी सेहत अच्छी है, उनकी सेहत अच्छी, अभी शायद 2 दिन के अंदर उनको डिस्चार्ज भी कर देंगे.
The Prime Minister has taken stock of his mother's health. He's met her, and there were several other BJP leaders, including the Chief Minister of Gujarat, who was also present there. And politicians from across party lines have been taking to social media, pouring in their wishes for a speedy recovery to the Prime Minister's mother. But back in 2015, during a conclave with Mark Zuckerberg, this is what the Prime Minister had to say about his mother and the impact she's had on his life.
हर किसी के जीवन में, आप किसी भी व्यक्ति के जीवन में देखें, किसी भी की बायोग्राफी देखें, ऑटोबायोग्राफी देखें, 2 चीज़ें हमेशा आती हैं कि मेरे जीवन में मेरे टीचर का क्या रोल रहा, मेरे जीवन में मेरी माता का रोल क्या रहा. हर एक के जीवन में आता है. मैं भी एक सामान्य परिवार से हूँ. मेरे जीवन में मेरे माँ बाप का बहुत बड़ा रोल रहा है. माता जी है, 90 साल से भी ज़्यादा उम्र है, आज भी अपने सारे काम खुद करती हैं. अब जब हम छोटे थे तो हमारा गुजारा करने के लिए वे अड़ोस पड़ोस के घरों में बर्तन साफ करना, पानी भरना, मजदूरी करना, अपने बच्चों को बड़ा करने के लिए कितना कष्ट उठाया होगा.
You can't throw this charge willy-nilly with no authenticated source. We are currently trying to deal with Chinese aggression.
If we put India down, that means we can put Modi on the map. Is that the right strategy, or do you disagree with that kind of an approach?
I cited you ample evidence when it comes to Tablighi Jamaat. You said that this is some kind of conspiracy.
Here is Rahul Gandhi speaking in Hindi and saying that Hindi speakers should not dream big because they'll not get a job outside. That is where the problem begins.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to Viewpoint. We train the spotlight back on China on this edition. A nation that unleashed the pandemic upon the world back in 2019 remained evasive about it till early 2020. A nation that in the past has been the place of origin of the SARS virus, a nation under scrutiny for actively pursuing research in biological weapons, a nation which is on record stating that it is indeed researching and experimenting on various strains of the SARS viruses. But China has got away with it all so far. By making huge donations and contributions to the WHO, it is also accused of misusing its position as the WHO chair in the past, and also blamed for not allowing any proper investigation into the origin and outbreak of the China virus or COVID-19 from Wuhan. But you can't get away with assault on humanity. Karma will play catch up. And with what is happening in China at the moment, one gets the sense that Xi Jinping's time for being held accountable is nigh. 3 years after the outbreak, bodies are piling up. Death toll could cross 10 lakh or more than 1 million. There is no preparedness, no medicines, no infrastructure. In fact, reports indicate that the Chinese are looking for Indian cure and remedies via the black market for the China virus. And a lot among the Chinese just want to get out of China.
This is the result of Xi Jinping's decision to lift China's zero-COVID policy. Bodies are piling up in mortuaries as the country battles one of its worst phases of the pandemic. Experts are predicting that the death toll will reach 1 million. As the situation gets more dire, Chinese are combing through the black market to hunt for Indian drugs. China approved 2 COVID-19 antivirals this year, but their limited supply and steep prices have driven many Chinese to look for cheaper but illegal options. So 4 kinds of generic anti-COVID drugs from India are being sold illegally in the Chinese market.
Government of India has got its own supplies in order, number one. It's China which is facing deficiency of drugs. So basically the local government always has to come out with the deficit of drugs from the system's perspective, and they need to talk to the respective governments. And in this case, Indian government, that we want to have these drugs.
Meanwhile, a US intelligence report claims that China revealed its biological weapons ambition quite a while before the pandemic ravaged the world. The declassified report claims that in 2005, the US State Department publicly stated that China operates an offensive biological weapons program. 2 Chinese entities were specifically identified as likely involved, one of which is the Fifth Institute. The report said that in 2006, China acknowledged that the Fifth Institute specifically researches SARS coronaviruses. But China continues to play hide and seek. From not revealing the truth about the origin of the virus, to concealing the real number of cases and deaths, and hastily lifting restrictions which have triggered the biggest outbreak the world has ever seen. It's been one misstep after another. So who will hold Xi Jinping accountable?
Let's go straight across to our guest. Andrew K. P. Leong, international and independent China strategist, is with us. Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow non-resident at the Hudson Institute, joining us from Japan. Dr. Sumaya Sheikh, healthcare expert, neuroscientist, is joining us from Australia. Connor Brown, biorisk expert, joining us from Northern Ireland. Namaste, and thank you very much for joining us on this conversation, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start with Dr. Satoru Nagao. We've had another epidemiologist make an observation that what we are seeing now is a thermonuclear wave. It's a bad wave. This would further affect the entire globe. How is it that one country which is struggling to handle COVID-19, its zero COVID policy has gone bust, it's thrown open all doors and windows, and 3 years down the line, they are not even ready to try and handle a situation of a COVID outbreak in their own country, when the outbreak first started in Wuhan, doctor? And this country has not been held accountable so far. Its leadership has not been held accountable. They have not been made to pay punitive damages for what they have caused to the entire world. Not just loss of lives, but this has crippled nations. What China has unleashed.
Yeah. Viewed from the current situation, what China has done is relatively clear. They do not care about the spread of the COVID-19 in outside of their country. They only worry about situation in their country, but they do not care about the other country. So there is a possibility that the COVID-19 start in China will spread to the other country if we do not stop the flow of the people from China. So that is a very concerning point. And if the new variant has spread in China, new variant or not decided yet, not identified yet. But if this is a new variant, which is spreading in China currently, in this case, we need to prepare. We need to prepare this new variant. So we should stop the flow of the people from China as a preventive measure. That is maybe effective policy we should choose just now. We must defend ourselves because China will not defend us. China's activity will not care about country around China.
But Dr.
So
Naga, what is happening
ourselves.
is that a lot of Chinese, this is a report that suggests that a lot of Chinese are making a beeline for Japan. They are living in they are buying properties, they are trying to get business management visas, especially the wealthy, and they're making investments upward of $40,000, and then they buy a property and then they get a one-year visa and they are wanting to stay for the long term in Japan. So Japan is one of the first preferred destinations for Chinese who have had enough of what's going on in China.
Indeed, yes. Currently, many Chinese tourists come to Japan and buy many medicines. So when we go to the medical store, we cannot get medicine for the cold because Chinese tourists has already bought all of it. So suddenly it has happened, and the people was very surprised because we cannot get medicine for cold. But what happened in China, we start to understand, and there is a possibility this is a crisis. So that's why we must prepare the new wave came from China. So that's why we must prepare. So currently Japan will start COVID-19 test of all of the passenger came from China. But at the same time, is it enough? It's a matter of concern. We must stop the flow of the people. That is the most effective way.
So you're saying influx of people from China has to stop even as China has opened up its borders and it says that international flights are allowed. Although international travel for its own citizens, it's still working out the policy, but it's openly allowed, said no quarantine, no testing, you can come into China. But who would want to go to China right now? That's another question. Dr. Sumaya Sheikh is joining us from Stockholm in Sweden. I correct myself there. But Dr. Sheikh, how would you see China's handling of COVID overall over the last 3 years? Should this outbreak have happened in China, 5 provinces in the throes, 1 million cases per day, one day itself, the report suggests 37 million cases. In December 2022, in 1 week, there were certain days when such huge spikes have been seen. Nearly 18% of the Chinese population is now in the grips of COVID-19.
Yes, thank you for having me. I think it's right now, things are really bad and very sinister in a way that, I mean, they've just opened everything up once again after closing it down. I mean, I'm not an advocate of closing everything down, but what the current government of China is giving a signal to the world and to the population in China that things are becoming better, you know, things are going back to normal after the outbreak, whereas it is very sinister in the way that they are recording deaths. As a matter of fact, they're only recording COVID cases, or rather not even COVID cases, the only people that die from respiratory illnesses with a COVID infection. They're not counting deaths that are, you know, due to other illness, other conditions such as the gut problems, lung problems, you know, liver and kidney and all sorts of problems that come, cardiovascular issues that arise due to COVID infection. So only respiratory deaths have been counted, then stopped even doing the tests for ordinary people. So this is basically artificially truncating the number of COVID infections in China, which is even more sinister because like the world is thinking that, okay, now because the Chinese wave is going down, the rest of the world is going to follow, which is not true. In fact, in Christmas, Australia, where my family is, has one of the largest number of COVID infections, as so with America and other places. So obviously a lot of people are traveling from China and Christmas time, and that is kind of carrying on the infections. And of course, the other issue is the way that the Chinese are considering fully vaccinated people, which is like, you know, especially after so many waves, and the latest one in particular, double vaccinated is no longer considered fully vaccinated because everybody knows that 2 doses of vaccine after 6 months or beyond, even 3 months or beyond has no meaning. You have to give a booster dose, specifically those who are at risk of mortality and COVID, infections. So I think double dose, majority of the people are double dosed. Very few amount of people are with the third dose. So I think that is also causing a problem. The third thing is that the Chinese vaccine, the indigenous vaccines that are mostly given, the Sinovac and Sinopharm, they are not good vaccines. I mean, the Sinovac is another inactivated vaccine, just like the indigenous Covaxin that India has prepared, but it is much, much lower, even beneath Covaxin. Covaxin has about 77% efficacy in the studies, and Chinese inactivated vaccine is around, yes, exactly. So it's below 50, and that's still given. And it's still given not just to the Chinese in China, but also people outside. So, for example, a lot of people in UAE has had it. Germany has now considered giving that to just Chinese people in Germany. I mean, what sort of logic is that? So I think this vaccine is absolutely rubbish, and it should not be given a chance, especially when there are so many better vaccines available for a country like China, because it's not just about China anymore. It's impacting the entire world, as we've seen in the last 3 years or so. So I think
the other additional concern is not just the efficacy of Sinovac or Sinopharm. The fact is that it says that 2 doses of Sinovac is not enough. You need to give at least 3 doses. And China has not been able to even vaccinate or inoculate its own population thrice. A large number of senior citizens have perished because they have not been given priority. They say, okay, their lives are dispensable. Is that the attitude that one should have? But 3 years down the line, there was a phase when nations did not know what to be done, what needs to be done. That was the first year. By the time the second year happened, nations started prepping themselves. Nations like India, which share similar of the 1/5 of the world's population like China today, manufactured their own PPE kits, started getting their own infrastructure in place. Vaccines were done. Inoculation drive was done. Nearly 2 billion vaccines have been administered in our country. But Connor Brown, can China be allowed to get away for its ill preparedness, for its inefficient medicines, and the way they have handled their own people, COVID in their own country?
Well, I don't really like the use of the term "get away." That implies that they should be held accountable for something, which I don't think is actually the case. I think what's happening in China right now is an absolute humanitarian tragedy, and as previous commentators have discussed, the reason for that happening is because they were vaccinating with a low efficacy vaccine against the Omicron variant. And one thing that I would also say as well is that 3 doses of the vaccine, of all vaccines, even mRNA vaccines, are required for good protection against Omicron. So I'm not quite sure what you're really asking me with regards to your question. The situation in China is basically because the Chinese wasted time. They had about a year, as you mentioned before, to inoculate senior citizens with 3 vaccinations and to inoculate most of their population with 3 vaccinations. But the problem is, of course, unlike many other countries in the world, they've never had an actual wave of COVID-19. So there exists no natural immunity within their population. And that's one of the big reasons as well that we're seeing such a very, very, very large number of illness and fatalities in China right now.
So would you then critique their zero COVID policy? Was their zero COVID policy or their approach, what they followed for the first 2 years where they claimed great success, was that flawed?
I think the idea wasn't flawed. I think the execution was flawed. So basically, if China had actually used the time that it had gained through the utilization of zero COVID, in other words, zero COVID was about buying time, right? If China had used that time effectively by fully vaccinating its population, concentrating on its elderly population especially, because of course this is the big problem that China has. The most vulnerable elements of Chinese society, which of course are elderly people, are the group of people that are the least well vaccinated. So this is their big mistake. But the concept itself was a good one. The problem is that they wasted time. They had a full year to even with the double vaccination of their inactivated vaccines, they could have boosted with an mRNA vaccine or any other high efficacy vaccine and protected their population. That would actually have worked. But the problem is they didn't do that. So now we're in a situation where we have unchecked transmission in China as a result of the Chinese government for one reason or another wasting a year of zero COVID.
So
that was the problem. It wasn't zero COVID was a good idea. It was executed very, very, very badly.
Do you believe the timing of them trying to throw open the borders and going from zero COVID policy to no COVID checks, just opening it up, Was that right? And when I
No.
talk about accountability, is a nation which is responsible for the origin of the virus, for the last 3 years has not been honest with its numbers. It's not shared the actual numbers of COVID right from February 2020 onwards. It has bulldozed its way with the WHO. It did not allow the team of experts who came from WHO to freely, independently go ahead and also investigate the origin of the virus, whether it leaked from the lab or it came from a fish marketplace. Look at the cause, look at the effect it has had on the entire globe, nations. And that's where I'm asking, should there not be accountability? And now 3 years down the line, because of what's happening in China, the entire world is going to witness yet another wave and surge. This is not something which nations would want.
No, no, of course not. Of course not. But whenever you talk about a country being held accountable, you have to realize that the vast weight of evidence indicates that the virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, originated through zoonotic transfer in China. The idea that the virus leaked from a lab is not by any means the dominant theory for the origin of SARS-CoV-2. The dominant theory is that the virus arose naturally in China. So something that happened as a natural event is not necessarily something that a country should be held accountable for. What happened in China could quite frankly have happened anywhere in the world.
But
it's not
although
blame.
There are whistleblowers from China, there are scientists from China, there are investigative reports that have been done by Australian journalists which very clearly prove that there is nothing zoonotic. This is an artificial virus that was being manufactured which was being experimented upon in a lab in Wuhan. So there are contrary studies. You're welcome to hold your view, but let me bring in Andrew K.P. Leong. The way you have handled it, the implementation of zero COVID policy is a failure. How China is going about right now or has gone about it has brought upon this distress on the Chinese people. Andrew K.P. Leong.
Well, there's been a great deal of mudslinging and blackening of China and finger pointing. But in spite of all this, China has just announced it's now downgraded the whole pandemic into a category B infections, because based on scientific evidence, the death rate, even though rising, but overall it has been extremely low. And of course, as pointed out, it's affected the vulnerable groups, the elderly group. I mean, the previous interviewee was right that China lost a bit of time towards the end in getting the infection rate higher for the elderly group. But there was a great deal of vaccine resistance amongst the elderly, and China did not impose it on them. So there's a bit of time lost, but nevertheless, the overall tendency is more or less the same as other countries. The pandemic has more MORPH, DED into an endemic. And hence that all restrictions now, apart from wearing masks, have been lifted as from, I think, tomorrow. And then foreigners are allowed in without any quarantine, provided they take a RAT test 48 hours beforehand, and they will not subject to any more restrictions. And also the border between China and Hong Kong has been opening. It will open as from tomorrow. So everything is now back to normal. But of course, the Chinese population, the vast majority of them, have been under lockdown for 3 years, and a lot of the people have lost patience. And now, then the restrictions have been lifted. They don't know what to do. There is a kind of panic there, and of course, people say, "Oh, my friends are infected." But now, as reported only a couple of hours ago, a lot of young people seem to be, taking it in their stride, in the sense that, well, my friend's been infected after 3 or 4 days, and it's getting well. It's just like another flu. But it doesn't mean that it's, of course, is always the case. There are bound to be people who have sort of existing
So you are Andrew K.P. Leong clearly saying 3 years of lockdown had people frustrated to an extent that they were ready to blow. That China was ready to internally blow up. That's what we saw, the series of protests, and it's that pressure that's pushed the government to try and open up everything. So when earlier your death rate, it's quite surprising, Andrew K. Leung, that the kind of impositions Chinese authorities implemented on nations, an entire country was under lockdown phase similarly in multiple provinces, multiple cities. That was all imposed, that was forced upon. You would barge into homes and sanitize the entire house without anybody's permission. And that was done, but you could not inoculate the people. You could not vaccinate the people. You could not get people to go ahead and vaccinate themselves because that you didn't want to impose upon. Everything else you imposed. The authorities imposed. Somewhere this argument doesn't seem to hold so much of water or is not so convincing. I just want to play out put out some more information there. And then I'll come back to you, Andrew. China's zero COVID policy, this actually backfired. Why? What it did? Every known case, even asymptomatic, was mandatorily hospitalized. What it led to was that a vast majority of population hasn't been infected. And as a result, like some of our experts were saying, has no immunity. What it also did, small outbreaks triggered hard lockdowns. And what it led to was fast spreading variant like Omicron, which are managing to break through. Then, what it did, suspected cases and their contacts were kept under isolation. Virus was able to spread rapidly after encountering pool of susceptible people. So everything, the learnings that you should have got from the Spanish flu, the learnings that you could have got from other nations, and also the first 2.5 years of COVID-19 pandemic and how nations went through it, those learnings were not taken into account. Experts sounding an alarm for China. 60% of the population could be infected in the next 3 months. The death toll could rise to 500,000 people by April. Number of deaths likely to go up to 1.6 million by the end of 2023. 70% of Beijing's population is now hit by the new Omicron strain. So is this the right way to go about things, Andrew K. Leung? Are you convinced what the Chinese authorities have done is right? Or is this only going to further complicate matters, not just for China, but unleash a fresh wave in many parts of the world?
Well, have you finished your side of the story? Well, you might respond. Obviously, China has got a fifth of the humanity on the planet within its nation. And then China
so does India.
Extremely successful in not allowing...
India has 2.1 billion vaccines administered. Another 1 lakh vaccines of precautionary doses were administered voluntarily today.
Can I continue, please? You mustn't interrupt me. Otherwise, I would just
please
get
complete.
off.
Please complete.
Don't invite me to your show. You would keep on...
No, please complete.
Okay? Well, China has been relatively very successful in not allowing the pandemic to spread from province to province. You have a fifth of humanity on the planet in this nation. So China has achieved the world's lowest infection rate and the lowest death rate by any account, even though it's rising amongst the elderly people, as I just explained. China is now changing into a targeted approach, targeted towards the elderly, targeted towards the people with existing conditions, and also targeted to elderly homes. But for the rest of the people, yes, the infections are rising, but it's just like another serious case of flu. I mean, people get it well, they get well in a week or so. Now there is a problem with lack of medicine because all of a sudden people are required to self-test. And there is the government is no longer imposing this mandatory test on them. And so there is a mad rush to get medicine. And hence this is the reason. So now I admit that China, of course, lost precious time in not forestalling this eventuality. Is bound to happen with any country as the pandemic is eventually, peter out, as with any kind of virus. So that they lost some time in getting prepared, in stocking up the medicine, educating the people. But doesn't mean it's a failure. It's a tremendous success, I would say.
Well,
so.
you mount a very stirring defense, Andrew. I'm just going to allow me to just take it to our other panelists, Dr. Satoru Nagao.
It's going to last for the next couple of
You
months.
mount a stirring defense, sir, but I would like to very respectfully say that India also carries a fifth of the planet's population. India has administered more than 2.1 billion vaccines. Even today, voluntarily, more than 1 lakh precautionary doses have been administered. Sir, in India and a nation which has fifth of the world's population, priority and primacy was given to the senior citizens when the vaccines were developed that they should be vaccinated first. China is doing all of that 3 years later. So all that China did is trying to unlearn and then relearn. It didn't learn, it didn't follow from the world. And 3 years are not enough for you to stockpile, have a stockpile of vaccines, have a stockpile of testing kits when you are busy trying to sell it at 4 times the cost to other nations when the pandemic broke out. When you are inflating the cost of testing kits, inflating the cost of vaccines, inflating the cost of PPE kits and putting nations under pressure, and you don't have enough now 3 years later to continue to help your own citizens. Dr. Satoru Nagao, somehow this defense doesn't fly, sir. One would want to...
Simply, we can say, we can trust India and we cannot trust the Chinese government. Because Chinese government, what about such kind of information? We cannot trust the information of the Chinese government. Even if the Chinese in Chinese continent do not trust the information came from their government. So under such kind of situation, we are confident to say we can trust India, but we cannot trust the Chinese government. So we must defend ourselves. That's the only solution. That's the only way. We cannot trust Chinese government. Because that's the current situation, I think.
No, it's not just about trust. It's about sharing and transparency, sharing information. And where there is criticism, India was criticized during the second wave. The whole world was trying to pounce upon India and question its COVID management. But where we were, it was a 2.5-2-month cycle where it was very, very critical. After that, India emerged out of it. People came out and got themselves vaccinated. There was a vaccine campaign which was done. China has the same 2 vaccines. India has 2. India was manufacturing 2 vaccines. We have got digital records of everything. China also has got digital imprints and records. But have they approached COVID the wrong way? Have they got it all wrong? Has the leadership got the approach wrong? Dr. Sheikh, doesn't the empirical evidence point in that direction?
Well, I agree that the whole world should share.
May I, Andrew, Dr. Sheikh, please. And then I'll come back to you, sir, for a quick comment. Yeah, Dr. Sheikh.
It's the real question that we've got to ask is holding Chinese government accountable right now, is that really going to translate to good scientific results or good results? I think that's one of the biggest questions to ask. Or should we just, look after ourselves and, look out into our home countries and, deal with the way that COVID can be managed in our home countries? The second thing that we've got to ask is, despite having the access to, I don't disagree in the way that the lockdown managed is extremely bad. There are two sides to this argument, and hear me out. Because Australia is very similar. Unless and until you don't have vaccine, and if you want to prevent those deaths, put your country into lockdown, and if you can manage that economically and all the other ways that you can do so, it's a good idea. It's not a bad idea. Lockdown wasn't exactly the worst idea during COVID history, but it's got to be taken with a pinch of salt because, look at how we've managed. In Australia, as soon as the vaccines came over, people started getting vaccinated. It was almost enforced on everybody. Nearly, large number of population, nearly everyone's vaccinated in Australia, and then people opened up. And China, it's too late to do this in China. I think that is my problem with China at the moment, that 3 years later, if you still haven't got your vaccines figured out, that is a problem. That is point A. 3 years later, if majority of your people are only 2 doses, and as Dr. Brown said, whether it's your Sinovac or inactivated vaccine or any other vaccine, you've got to have more than 2 doses now. And not just 2 doses. If you look at the data, nearly all the vaccines stop giving you protection after 3-4 months or 6 months at the max. So
in 3 years, a nation like China, if it cannot ramp up the infrastructure required to back its population at all levels, then it's something which does not fly. And you could impose everything else, not just on its own people, but across the world. But you could impose vaccination and inoculation. That argument also somehow does not fly. I've run out of time. I thank all our panelists. Thank you very much for joining us. The critical aspect remains that this nation, its leadership needs to be held accountable for what it's wrought upon humanity. We're going to wind up Viewpoint on that note. Biggest exclusive follows.
Good evening, hello and welcome to the special broadcast. I'm Anusha Soni. The proposal to introduce a unique identification card, Makkal, by the Tamil Nadu state government has stoked a political row. The BJP has accused the DMK government of trying to create a parallel identification system to replace the national scheme, Aadhaar. DMK government is also accused of trying to stonewall the central government schemes and harbor a divisive agenda. While Tamil Nadu is not the only state which has a unique identification, other states like Haryana or the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir have separate identity cards too, but for different purposes altogether. No other state has attempted to create a parallel system of this nature that challenges Aadhaar. Is this a mere attempt by the state government to augment its welfare schemes, or there is more that meets the eye? Data on households across the state already exists with the state government, which is further linked to the biometric. So then why do we need another Makkal? Why have another database in place? That's what experts are asking. Not to forget that even the Aadhaar scheme ran into a long legal battle with ample checks and balances placed by none other than the Supreme Court of India. We discuss all these different angles on Biggest Exclusive tonight. Well, let's tell you the arguments on both the sides. What is it that the state government is saying, and what are the key questions that the BJP as the opposition party in the state are raising? Well, the DMK says that we've proposed Makkal ID card for Tamil Nadu residents. This is for the welfare schemes of the state, and more importantly, the residents can get the benefits in a targeted manner. The BJP is demanding not to introduce a state-based ID card because it's only going to create further confusion. If you talk about DMK, they say that it's a state-based identity card for the welfare schemes. We'll be able to give more targeted benefits to the residents of the state. BJP says that it's a copy of the existing Aadhaar ID system which exists at the national level. So you do not require it at the state level. BJP further says that using any other system will lead to corruption. This is only a way of making some kind of money. Corruption takes place despite the use of Aadhaar. That's what the defense of the DMK has been. So those are the two sides of the argument. Let me open this question to our guests as well who are joining us on the broadcast. The key question is this mere politics on both the sides, or this is a genuine attempt by the state government to guard the benefits of the people so that they reach to them in a targeted way? Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Narayan Tirupati, who is the Vice President of Tamil Nadu BJP. He is joining us on the broadcast. We also have Salim Dharanidharan from the DMK. R. Rajagopalan, who is a senior journalist, is also joining us on the broadcast. Suman C. Raman will also be with us in just a bit from now. Mr. Tirupati, I'm coming to you first, taking in a view from you because the BJP has criticized it. What is the problem if the state government wants to come up with yet another identification? Well, the DMK says, look, we have so many welfare schemes. We want to ensure that there are targeted benefits, and for those targeted benefits we need a state database. What is the problem with it?
No, there is nothing wrong to have a state database, but you have you can have a card for issuing certificates like death certificates or birth certificates, income certificates or community certificates. But when there is Aadhaar, which has proved itself that eradication of corruption and also removal of fake beneficiaries, which for the last more than 5 to 6 years, it has been helpful in entire India. In fact, we have saved around 2.5 lakh crores by using this Aadhaar. And that is the reason. See, the central government gives schemes and they fund.